had just regained consciousness after being unconscious. The man was anxious to find his daughter, because in his previous life a zombie pandemic had broken out worldwide, so humanity spent its youth fighting it. When their loved ones were gone, the survivors had no reason to live, so the man chose to hang himself to join his daughter. But just when everything seemed over, an angel suddenly appeared and offered him a chance that he could be reborn up to 99 times. So on the first reincarnation he hurriedly packed and sought a perfect shelter with his daughter to live out their lives. But life was not a dream. Despite 99 rebirths, he still couldn't save his daughter no matter what he did, until the 98th rebirth, when he finally found humanity's shelter with his daughter. However, his daughter's body was cold, long without breath, so he could only grow old there alone until his death. The man went to his daughter's grave and used the gun in his hand to end his life, to return to the starting point and use the remaining rebirths, using knowledge, experience, and lessons from before. This time he was calmer. He quickly prepared some essentials and went out with his daughter. But things seemed different this time, because previous rebirths followed a set trajectory. But this time variables changed, and unexpectedly his final challenge was a sea of zombies. Faced with the emergency, he locked his daughter inside and used his body as a shield, trading his life for hers. Just when it seemed over, a madness rose within him, and he single-handedly took down hundreds of zombies in minutes. Even his appearance improved, becoming mysteriously younger and more handsome. The story opens with a schoolgirl lying motionless on the grass in a gloomy forest, rain pouring, darkness everywhere, her body covered in blood, chest stabbed and bloody, a desperate voice crying, "My daughter, I'm sorry." In the night, one eye stared wide as if it had witnessed something horrific. Blood smeared across the face, the remorseful words still echoing, "It was father who harmed you." Ryu Min-seok, clad in full gear, collapsed to his knees, hands on the ground as he looked at the motionless schoolgirl before him in the torrential rain. His mind was filled with apologies, repeated again and again. Ryu Min-seok was utterly despondent, tears streaming down and mixing with the rain, his body bearing wounds, 99 of them. Ryu Min-seok bowed his head in anguished helplessness, the scene around him seeming to mourn his pain. Suddenly he rose, wiping away his tears. A new resolve formed in his mind. There was only one last chance. Ryu Min-seok wiped the relentless tears, and the number 1 appeared above his head. Thinking of his daughter, he spoke with determination. "Trust me, Dami. This time for sure." Ryu Min-seok's face twisted with anger, teeth clenched, eyes full of grief and resolve. He would not fail again. Cut to another scene. Ryu Min-seok's face registered surprise as his eyes widened and his mouth fell open. On TV, a reporter, visibly alarmed, announced that a strange creature had appeared in the city center, accompanied by footage of people who had lost their humanity staggering about, covered in blood. Those infected by the virus had become bloodthirsty, frenzied attackers tearing into normal people. Chaos erupted. People screamed and fled. Zombies, the world collapsed in an instant. Back in that small room, he turned toward the approaching figure. The other person asked, "Dad, what are you watching?" Ryu Min-seok recalled memories. Ryu Dami stepped forward. He reflected that she should have survived. In some memory, Min-seok held bloodied Dami, motionless in his arms, and wailed in helplessness. "Dami, wake up. Please don't leave your father alone." No reply came. He could only scream until his neck strained in despair, his thoughts returning. For an old middle-aged man and a little girl, this world was like hell. Then, somewhere, a pair of feet dangled in the air above a toppled chair. Recalling that scene, he felt a gentle certainty. We were dead. Darkness consumed everything. It was over at that very moment. The scene then blazed with light as the goddess Giryong appeared, breathtakingly beautiful, hovering before him. Ryu Min-seok knelt on the ground, stunned. She smiled radiantly, her body wreathed in glittering light. Ryu Min-seok felt as if she were confiding in him. "Father, receive one more chance." He suddenly opened his eyes wide, cold sweat pouring down, his face etched with terror. He lay in the room with eyes wide in shock. Above his head the number read, 99. Ryu Min-seok jolted awake, looked over his body and shouted in panic, "I'm still alive? What the hell is happening?" As if realizing something, Min-seok froze, glancing off to the side. He spoke suspiciously, then slowly looked into the mirror and said, staring at his sweat-soaked reflection and the large number above it. Min-seok was alarmed. "What is this number?" Realizing he had been sent back in time before the incident, he rushed to his daughter's door and knocked. He pounded the wooden door with both hands, shouting, "Dami, Ryu Dami, open the door, come on, hurry." Ryu Dami stepped out, confused and slightly annoyed. "What is it, Dad? Why are you yelling in the middle of the night? What's going on?" Ignoring her reproach, Ryu Min-seok grabbed her hand tightly and shook her hard. "Dami, are you okay? You're still alive, right? Right. Startled by the action, she shouted, "What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare again, Dad?" Those rough hands held her wrist anxiously. Ryu Min-suk flung the door open. Both were already dressed with large backpacks on. Pulled along, Ryudami cried out, "Oh my God, what's wrong with you, Dad?" Impatient, he urged, "Don't talk, come with me. Now." Everything around them was devastated and scarred by battle. They moved quickly. Ryudami was confused and irritated. "You're hurting me. Let go and we'll talk." Unmoved, Min-suk kept dragging her. "Hurry, there's no time." Worried, he turned and shouted, "If you don't hurry, both of us will." From behind him, a zombie leapt up, its mouth dripping with blood aimed at him. Snapping awake from the dream, Ryu Min-suk screamed in panic. He startled and looked around as if he had realized something. Realizing the oddity, his panic deepened. He had returned here again and, seeing himself in the mirror with the number 98 above his head, Min-suk was puzzled. The count had decreased? Using his wits, he understood. In that moment, father realized. Min-suk lowered his head, clutching the blanket tight. This was his life count. In other words, it was the number of attempts. His hand tightened on the blanket until the veins stood out. The number 98 glowed faintly larger. Following his thought, father could save his child. Cutscene. A golf club slammed into a zombie's head. Min-suk gripped the club, fearful but fighting bravely for Ryudami behind him. Staring fixedly at the enemy, he would do everything to save his child. In another memory, Min-suk sat hiding in a corner, teeth clenched as a woman hid in a car surrounded by zombies outside. Morals be damned. For his child, he would do anything. But Ryudami, panic-brimmed and teary, was seized and surrounded by zombies. Ryu Min-suk was held tightly by two zombies and struggled angrily to break free. His hand freed itself and drew out a gleaming, sharp knife. "Father." Min-suk drove the knife straight into his own heart. Pain contorted his face. The two nearby zombies recoiled, their distorted faces betraying sudden recognition. A spiked baseball bat smashed down, warping faces into grotesque distortions. Min-suk swung relentlessly, blasting away each frenzied zombie charging at him. The number above his head was now only 13. Each blow grew stronger as he struck the zombies' heads. Min-suk became a tireless fighting machine, constantly swinging the club. Even the zombies gaped in fear at him. Swinging once more, a zombie's face flew apart, its eyes clouded white. Standing amid the fallen zombies, Min-suk remained, breathing heavily. His gaze seemed to cling to hope whether 100 times or 1,000, from one chance to the next. Ryudami, resembling a zombie, slowly approached him. Min-suk turned and glanced at her. Ryudami rasped, "Dad, Dad, save me." And he looked at her with helpless eyes. Ryudami opened her mouth toward him, about to bite. Rather than pulling away, he held her tightly in his arms. Anguished, weak as he was, a father could only cause his daughter to die. With one arm clutching her, he raised a gun with the other and aimed it at his own head. The loud gunshot rang out as he ended his life. Cut to a scene. His eyes squeezed shut, tears glistening at the corners. He opened his eyes wide with fatigue and anguish, tears streaming down his cheeks. Ryu Min-suk lay gaunt and powerless beneath the blanket. He suddenly sat bolt upright. His heavy eyes looked down. Ryudami was awakened by the noise, lying there with her eyes half open. She opened the door and stepped out, voice full of questions. "Dad, what are you doing? It's so noisy in the middle of the night." He was packing, a sharp knife in his hand. Shadow hid half his face, so she couldn't read his expression. She froze for a moment at the sight before her. Ryu Min-suk stared at her with a strange look. Ryudami grew slightly worried. "Dad." He reached out toward her. Suddenly, he pulled her into a tight hug, surprising Dami. He slowly let go and moved closer to her. Ryu Min-suk whispered, "I promise." His hands clung to her as if afraid of losing her. Even if he failed hundreds, thousands, even millions of times, he would live and save her at any cost. He meant to say more, but the words wouldn't pass his lips. Min-suk's face grew stern as he shouted, "You just have to trust me, my daughter, do you understand?" Ryudami still couldn't understand. "Dad?" Cut to the present. Ryu Min-suk, desperate with the number 1 above his head, meaning he had nearly used up the 100 attempts yet still couldn't prevent his daughter's death. He held her in his arms, both covered in wounds and blood. The two stood before a city almost intact. After 99 tries, the father finally found a perfect shelter. Soldiers came to help the two of them, calling for more people. The base was protected by the military. Min-suk lay in a hospital bed as doctors and medical staff, including university hospital physicians, attended to the survivors, contrasting the harsh world outside. Inside, people lived as if normal, children played, and thanks to conditions and luck, the order here hadn't collapsed, truly a perfect refuge. Under the sunset light, Ryu Min-suk's hair had turned white. He sat in a wheelchair holding a bouquet before a tombstone, a lifetime passing. He spoke to the grave. 40 years have passed since I came here. My daughter, you've waited a long time, haven't you? Min-seok gently laid the bouquet down, thinking he must be careful, for this was his last chance. The bouquet gleamed in the sunset light on the tombstone. He affirmed it, and now he was certain. His face showed joy. This place wasn't dangerous. As long as they lived and reached here, it would be their final destination. He placed the gun to his temple and smiled calmly and happily, promising, "Wait for me. I'll come pick you up soon." A fierce gunshot rang out across the sky. Ryu Min-seok closed his eyes and rested, his face somber in thought. After steeling himself, he sighed. Ryudami stood beside him amid a room scattered with belongings, sneaking a glance at her father. Ryu Min-seok glanced at Ryudami, his face grave, quietly checking if she was ready. Ryudami returned his worried look. The two seemed to understand each other. Just before stepping into Daejeon, the final place of refuge, Ryu Min-seok recalled the first loop. In his hands lay Ryudami's cold corpse, her face blank. Dami was dead. Seeing his daughter lying motionless, Ryu Min-seok immediately collapsed. It was his own mistake. Ryu Min-seok gritted his teeth, half his face plunged in shadow, revealing his resentment. 40 years. He'd repeated the loop hundreds of times, preparing everything to perfection just to keep Dami alive until the end. Ryu Min-seok gripped the doorknob so hard the veins in his hand stood out. Tension enveloped the father and daughter. The door cracked open. Ryu Min-seok was more determined than ever this time. He would not make the same mistake. But the sight beyond the door stunned him. He froze, staring at the twisted monsters before him. Right outside the house, a disgusting horde of bloodied zombies had gathered as if waiting a long time to attack the two of them. An unexpected variable, Ryu Min-seok could only stand there, rooted to the spot, his mind filled with disappointment and despair. The zombies seemed like death come to claim his daughter's life. Even after rehearsing the scenario countless times over 40 years, he could not have foreseen this variable. Fear seized his body. He was completely stunned and motionless. Recalling previous loops, Ryu Min-seok felt as if he had reached a dead end, because in the previous 99 attempts, this had never happened. The zombies immediately screamed when they spotted the two of them. They lunged at the father and daughter like ravenous wolves. Ryu Min-seok stood motionless on the doorstep as bloody arms flailed, reaching to grab him. The scene was almost unimaginable. Ryu Min-seok stared, dazed, as they rushed in to tear him apart. There should never have been zombies at the front door. Seeing that, Ryudami screamed in terror, pulling Ryu Min-seok back to reality. "Dad." In that split-second moment, Ryu Min-seok roughly shoved her backward. Ryudami was thrown aside, landing on her back on the floor. The door began to close. Ryu Min-seok's stunned face was gradually obscured, and the ferocious zombies were upon him in an instant. Ryudami watched numbly as her father vanished from sight. She realized what Ryu Min-seok had just done. Her pupils contracted in fear. The door shut with the zombies' howls pouring through. Ryudami screamed in horror and curled up before rising. She dashed to the door. "Dad, what are you doing?" Ryudami desperately called for Ryu Min-seok, pounding the door with one hand while trying to pull the knob with the other. Outside, Ryu Min-seok was being savagely torn apart by the zombies. They pounced on him, fighting over him like a tasty morsel. Ryudami's panicked voice echoed, "Dad." Ryu Min-seok gritted his teeth and braced himself against the zombies. Pain twisted his face, and blue veins stood out across his body. His eyes gradually lost focus. The agony of losing his child felt like his intestines being ripped apart. Ryudami pounded on the door in despair, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her father had endured that pain 99 times already. The zombies kept ripping at Ryu Min-seok. He gritted his teeth and endured it all. Despite the agony, he never intended to give up, so the suffering of death had become all too familiar to him. Images of young Ryudami flooded Ryu Min-seok's mind. The little girl curled in her crib, wearing a yellow dress, her wide, adorable eyes reaching out toward him. At that moment, Ryu Min-seok felt like the luckiest man alive. Therefore, Ryu Min-seok seemed to give in, pressing his hand to the door, his eyes soft as if peering through to see his daughter from long ago. But on the other side, Ryudami screamed in despair, "Don't cry anymore, child." Ryu Min-seok gradually felt his consciousness fading, yielding to the brutality of the zombie virus. Could everything end like this? Was he to die here forever? Thinking of his daughter's fate in previous loops, Ryu Min-seok realized Ryudami was always in danger. His legs, about to buckle, were suddenly reinforced so he could stand as if made of stone. No. Ryu Min-seok tensed and heaved the zombies that were trying to climb over him into the air. Ryu Min-seok's face turned fierce. He clenched his teeth in rage, no matter if it took 100 or 1,000 times. His death could come again and again. But, he screamed, whether from the pain of being torn apart or from bitter resolve rising to protect Ryudami as long as she lived. His eyes went milky white, mouth agape like a crazed beast. Whatever happened, he must not be allowed to die. His outer coat was ripped to shreds as Ryu Min-seok flung the zombies away, his body crisscrossed with brutal wounds and bulging muscles. A bald-headed zombie quickly sprang forward, its eyes bloodshot. It lunged with its mouth wide open, and Ryu Min-seok simultaneously raised his veiny hands toward it. He struck like a lightning bolt, catching the bald zombie off guard. Ryu Min-seok snapped its neck. Without hesitation, Ryu Min-seok proceeded to take down the monsters one by one with his bare fists. Another blonde-haired zombie leapt forward and sank its teeth into his shoulder. Ryu Min-seok, furious, bit back at it while using his hand to wrench its head off his shoulder. With a pop, the creature's head came off its neck, and Ryu Min-seok used his strength to finish the zombie. Immediately after, he drove his fist through another zombie's abdomen, blood spraying into the air. Ryu Min-seok leapt up at once. The moonlight lit a section of the sky, making the scene even more grotesque. The zombies below howled in anger. Ryu Min-seok silenced them with his fists, smashing their heads flat against the ground. The other zombies froze, their bodies twisting unnaturally. In front of him lay the corpses of zombies strewn across the ground. Behind him, others prowled like hungry tigers. Blood from the zombies and from him mixed as he stood imposingly before the house, muscular, fists ready to finish off any monsters that lunged. He turned, regarding the remaining zombies with one eye like a death god about to strike. That eye flashed. The zombies charged, mindless creatures rushing forward like predatory beasts. After 100 failed attempts, Ryudami collapsed to the floor, helplessly staring at the door. At that moment, the door suddenly swung open and light poured into the dark room. Father, though she'd lost all hope, she reflexively looked up with eyes reddened from crying, wishing it was that man, and hoping for another chance. Ryu Min-seok stepped in heavily, his body covered in wounds. Ryudami looked up strangely. He said, "Don't worry, Dami. Even if I'm no longer human, I'll still protect you to the end." Bathed in the light, Ryu Min-seok mouthed. His eyes had turned blood red. Ryu Min-seok smiled gently and asked, "Are you okay, my daughter?" "I'm back." Day 7, since the zombie outbreak, Mapo District. Seoul buildings in ruins. An eerily silent scene with only a few scattered lights. On a building with a cheerful panda sign that starkly contrasted with the current circumstances, a bald soldier with a fierce face swore, "Damn it, what the hell is this?" He stood there with soldiers behind him aiming their guns at Ryu Min-seok and Ryudami, shouting, "Who are you?" The darkness hid Min-seok's face so he couldn't read his expression. Ryudami cowered completely behind Min-seok. The man wondered how they had survived the swarming zombies outside and crawled here as if nothing had happened. After a pause, Min-seok spoke. The man, seeing his face, asked, "What's wrong with your face?" A thought crossed his mind. Could it be? Ryu Min-seok stood silently there with blonde hair and sunglasses hiding his eyes. He grumbled. "A famous person, huh? Wearing sunglasses in this damn place, what for?" Min-seok and Ryudami remained stubbornly silent. Cha Hae-ri suddenly stepped forward, hands on her hips, commanding, "Get out." The soldier, angry at being interrupted, muttered the nickname. Venom Spider, Private Team T-Ho, former Captain Cha Hae-ri. She approached him and Dami, voice cold. "There's no room here anymore, so go find somewhere else." Dami, frightened of the woman, hid fully behind him. Annoyed by his calmness, she leaned in close, eyes threatening. "Didn't you hear me? I said get out." Suddenly her expression turned puzzled. He turned and revealed Dami coughing. "My daughter has been wandering outside for a week. Her asthma flared up and now she's very weak. Please, give me a chance to save her." He pleaded earnestly. "If not, at least please let the girl inside. I'm begging you." Dami beside him suddenly turned, mouth agape. "Huh." Cha Hae-ri stood frozen in stunned silence. She suddenly grew furious, her face contorted with veins standing out, her gaze like it wanted to tear the person before her apart. The bald soldier sneered and exhaled. "Is this guy crazy or what?" He stepped forward. "You think cheap tricks like paternal feelings will work on our captain?" Suddenly Cha Hae-ri's eyes filled with tears. She clenched her teeth to hold back a sob, leaving the man beside her stunned. She turned and ordered, "Let them in." The people behind her looked at her in confusion. She turned back, tears and snot still smeared. "Don't get me wrong, I just need more people to hold this supermarket." He spoke up. "Wipe your nose, girl." Taken aback, she glared angrily and spun away. The soldier behind, puzzled, tried to speak while he remained thoughtful and calculating. He stood there with no expression at all. Suddenly he smiled cheerfully, his gaze fixed on Hae-ri as he thought, "She hasn't changed at all, Captain Cha Hae-ri." Glancing at the lettering on her tight shirt, He thought she was the one who had gathered survivors in Mapo district, an ex-military person. Her whole bearing was majestic. Like a snake bearing its fangs, she'd held this supermarket to the end, cold as a serpent, but easily swayed when faced with apparent sacrifice. Lost in thought, he was startled when Ryudami screamed, "Dad!" She snapped angrily. "What was that just now?" "That was completely different from our original plan," he stammered in embarrassment. "No, Dami, that's not," the bald soldier shouted. "Hey, you two, come with me." Dami, startled, was grabbed by the coughing, wheezing man at her shoulder. He helplessly said, "Stop right there." Suddenly, Ryudami went pale, clutching her head and moaning softly. The man thought she was still acting a bit irritable. What now? Ryu Min-sok stepped forward, caught his daughter, and gave a reassuring gentle smile. He was filled with worry. Dami's condition was deteriorating faster than expected. She needed to rest immediately. If she rested, she wouldn't be in immediate danger. It all came down to those two variables. In Ryu Min-sok's mind was the image of her screaming in agony while his body on the other side of the door was covered in blood. It happened a week ago. Min-sok clutched his chest and looked down in worry. He thought about the thing he couldn't understand. He'd been bitten by a zombie yet survived, and now he was strong enough to crush them. His body had changed so much, he felt alien to himself. He was no longer the man he used to be. He suspected, could it be? Thought flashed through his head. Had he truly become a zombie? At the A-Mart branch in Hapjeong, looking at the building before him, he calculated that this had originally been the optimal route for his survival. The two moved closer to the supermarket. He observed that it was the only place with a military force defending it. Looking at the large stone column above the rubble, he thought that if they stayed there, Dami would be safe. He spoke up. "Why did the building next door collapse? It never used to be like that." The soldier, puzzled, said, "You're talking strangely. Are you from the future or something?" The man turned and began to explain. 3 days ago, the zombies swarmed in, and Cha Hae-ri fired her weapon, attacking the advancing zombies non-stop. By the path of her bullets, they fell writhing in pain. He continued. "Our captain single-handedly lured them to the building next door." She swung across the gap from building to building. On the building she was heading to, 2 soldiers were shooting down zombies that had purposely followed her. Below, zombies covered the ground with mouths agape, waiting for prey, truly terrifying. The entire building exploded. Zombie corpses hurled outward by the blast. Then the preset explosives detonated, blowing them all to pieces. He spat contemptuously. "They're probably minced by the blast. Damn monsters if any survived. They're trapped inside and will rot away." He suddenly turned and was startled to see him standing there silently. His eyes held a good deal of panic as he heard the recent news. The man gave a puzzled laugh. "Hey, what's with that look?" Behind him, a huge zombie was slowly closing in. Still unaware, he kept rambling on. "Don't tell me you actually think those zombies could crawl out of that rubble, right?" Hearing a sound, he turned and froze when he saw a building-sized, fat zombie right behind him. The zombie's face became clearer in the moonlight. 4 blood-red eyes and a gaping mouth revealing huge teeth. He stood motionless in shock, eyes wide. The zombie raised its hand into a fist and swung it high. That punch, along with its cold gaze, came hurtling down. It struck the ground with such force the earth shattered and rock flew up, crushing the man entirely. Cha Hae-ri stepped right into the flying debris. Another punch came down dangerously close to her. Cha Hae-ri glanced up coldly. As it attacked downward, she quickly dodged away. The soldiers around, seeing it, shouted a warning. "Zombie!" Everyone wore panic on their faces. "What the hell is that? Where did it come from?" Cha Hae-ri sat up, gripping her gun tightly. Min-sok helped Dami, who was sitting on the ground. Exerting her authority as leader, she shouted the order, "Open fire." On command, all the soldiers raised their guns and fired continuously at the creature. Bullets struck the zombie in volleys, but it stood motionless, unfazed. Suddenly it roared in fury. It lunged forward and swung its massive arms at the soldiers, who screamed in alarm. With that sweep, the soldiers were flung into the air like stalks of vegetables. Those who managed to dodge dropped to the ground, terrified, shouting. It spared no one. The zombie grabbed and hoisted one soldier high toward the sky. Suddenly, a backpack smashed into its face, turning its attention. Seizing that moment, Hae-ri lunged to grab the soldier and pull him out of the zombie's strike. She pressed hard on his shoulder and yelled, "Wake up, do you want to die?" The soldier scrambled up and replied, "Yes, ma'am." Behind them was Ryu Min-sok in the stance after throwing the backpack. Cha Hae-ri steadied herself, focused. "Get it together, Cha Hae-ri. This is nothing like 3 days ago. The thing isn't a normal zombie." She looked around. She shouted, "Run into the supermarket, now!" The 4 of them sprinted as fast as they could, while the zombie stood there tilting its head and watching. Ryu Min-seok reached out as if to say something. She stopped him. Shut up, just run. He turned and saw Dami running with all her might. His face suddenly contorted, his brows knit tightly together. Turning back toward the zombie, Dami was surprised by his action and looked back. He swung his fist high toward the zombie. The barricade outside the supermarket, we need to drive them toward that. Somewhere there are items tied down, with tools arranged underneath. Cha Hae-ri mentally worked out a countermeasure. Even if it's a zombie, it can't just penetrate instantly. In the meantime, she must find its weak point. Suddenly, her face went pale, and her steps faltered. Wait. In front of her, through the glass, were hundreds of people staring this way. She wondered why there were so many people on the first floor. Young and old, men and women, everyone looked terrified as they stared at her. The evacuation should have been finished by now. She skidded to a stop. Her feet made a scraping sound on the ground. Cursing under her breath, "Damn it." She turned and shouted, "I'll distract them, the three of you get inside now." She turned and saw only the soldier and Ryu Dami. Surprise flashed across her face. She barked at the soldier, "It's just you and the girl? Where's her father?" Anger flared as a thought occurred to her. Don't tell me he abandoned his daughter and ran off alone. Ryu Dami pointed back. "Over there." She stood frozen and silent. Her gaze followed the direction Dami pointed. His two hands were clenched together. Standing atop the zombie, he slammed blow after blow into its face. The zombie's head fell to the ground, smashed flat like tofu. His hands did not stop attacking. Both were covered in blood. Everyone's faces showed terror, mouths agape, eyes wide, frozen in place. Behind the man, shielding the child below from that violent scene, the zombie lay motionless on the ground. Min-seok's feet slowly stepped down. He bent over to breathe, his body smeared with blood. Min-seok rose and looked directly at Hae-ri, who was standing motionless. He spoke, "I'm sorry," leaving everyone stunned. The promise he'd made to Dami that he couldn't keep it. Cha Hae-ri and the soldier both turned their gazes toward her. Min-seok hung his head in remorse. "I was afraid you'd get hurt. I was truly terrified." Cha Hae-ri raised her gun and aimed it straight at him. She asked, her face full of fear, "So, who are you?" "Exactly." He bowed his head and was briefly silent. Min-seok reached up and touched his glasses. Ryu Min-seok. Ryu Dami prayed anxiously in her head. "Please no, Dad." He continued, "I am Dami's father and—" Dami panicked. "Please don't say it, Dad. Not here." Worried about revealing his identity. Worried for his safety, Dami feared he would be in danger. Ryu Min-seok removed his glasses, revealing fiercely red, confident eyes. He said, "I'm an expert on zombies." Unexpected by that answer, Hae-ri frowned in disbelief. "What?" He spoke without worry or hesitation. "Since the zombies appeared, I've thoroughly studied their weaknesses and characteristics to survive." Min-seok narrowed his eyes and smiled broadly, flashing even white teeth. "If this helps even a little, I'm glad. I hope to help everyone however I can." Hae-ri squinted and smiled, but the smile was forced. "So that's it." In a flash, she lunged forward and pressed a knife to his throat. Dami panicked. "Hey, what are you doing?" Hae-ri snapped angrily. "Shut up." She looked at the zombie's mushy head, analyzing it. That creature wasn't fazed by bullets, yet he could smash it to pieces with his bare hands. Watching Min-seok with his bloodshot eyes, her suspicion grew. That fiery red gaze was identical to theirs. Hae-ri stepped in close to threaten him, their eyes locked. She ground out, "Tell me, are you still human?" Cha Hae-ri snorted. "A zombie expert." Her gaze turned cold as she stared at Ryu Min-seok, her voice sharp. "Are you kidding me?" Looking at the monster behind him, she wondered how a creature immune to bullets could be shattered by his bare hands. Cha Hae-ri pressed the knife to his throat, staring intently at Ryu Min-seok's face, and those blazing eyes were just like theirs. "Speak, the knife is almost at your throat." Her voice full of anger, "Are you still human?" Ryu Min-seok replied calmly, "Of course bullets still work." Her puzzled, "What?" He gently avoided the blade, turned to look at the creature's body and explained to her, "That monster had already been weakened by gunfire earlier. I only finished it off." Now Ryu Min-seok truly carried the bearing of an expert. An eater. A zombie born from the fusion of two zombies, terrifying in attack power, but most notable for its defensive ability. His eyes lit up. However, it also had a weakness, its jaw, the starting point of the fusion. After saying that, he hesitated a bit. Of course, you'd need a blow as strong as an iron hammer to take it down. Cha Hae-ri still doubted. "What about the eyes?" Ryu Min-seok bent slightly so she could see better. "I was born lacking melanin." Cha Hae-ri's gaze remained slightly dreamy, so he continued with an excuse. "That's why I wear glasses to hide my eyes, because they make people uncomfortable." He pointed at the knife still at his throat and hesitantly asked, "So now, do I still look like a zombie?" Those words made Cha Hae-ri hesitate for a moment. A flicker of doubt remained suspicious indeed. There must be something. But at that moment, Ryudami ran up to stop her. The gesture made Cha-Hae-ri pause. No zombie would risk its life to protect a daughter. Finally, she lowered the knife, voice still cold. Fine. Her back straightened. Though still hesitant, she agreed, let them in. Cha-Hae-ri glanced at Ryu Min-seok and warned, I'll be keeping an eye on you from now on, expert. Saying that, she stomped off, annoyed. On her way, her gaze lingered on the fallen soldiers, emotions churning inside her. Just then, two people came running over, panting. Are you okay? Cha-Hae-ri didn't answer immediately. She kicked one of them hard with her foot. Ignoring his pain as he buckled to his knees, she scolded them sternly. When there's an incident, evacuate all citizens into the parking basement as fast as possible. Why didn't you? The sergeant flustered an explanation. We panicked. Cha-Hae-ri cut him off with a glare. What if that creature wasn't dead? Maybe everyone in the supermarket would be dead. Her eyes burned with anger as she warned them loudly. If I see this again, it won't be zombies killing you, I'll do it myself. The sergeant shouted back. Yes, ma'am. Captain, rest well. The sergeant waved at Cha-Hae-ri. Unlike his casual tone, the man who'd been kicked looked at her with eyes full of hatred. In the main hall of the supermarket, Ryudami exhaled slightly. That was close. Ryu Min-seok tilted his head and asked, What's the matter? She smiled. Dad didn't get found out. Ryudami whispered. Dad can lie so calmly? I nearly had a heart attack thinking you'd slip up. He shrugged, voice casual. You can't overdo it. She's not someone easily fooled, nor someone who'd pull a knife recklessly. Ryudami wondered, Is she someone you know, Dad? Huh. Ryu Min-seok recalled past memories of when he'd met Cha-Hae-ri, but since he couldn't tell his daughter, he shook his head. No, it's obvious from her expression. Seeing Dad dodge, she caught on and changed the subject. Do you even know what talking big means? Where did you learn that phrase? Ryu Min-seok smiled faintly. From your daughter. Ryudami was surprised. Huh? I never told you I thought you knew. His face lit up as he said, Of course. The image of the two of them chatting happily by the fire returned to his memory. There were many, many more. Ryudami gaped in surprise. That many. Ryu Min-seok just smiled, stood up and said, Stay there, I'll go get some food for you. He looked at his child with gentle eyes. Then he smiled softly when he saw his silly daughter fiddling with her hair. Not long before, Ryudami had given him a pair of glasses and said, Promise me, okay. Her voice was serious. Don't tell anyone that you've changed. She emphasized again that if they found out, they might harm him. Her tone was full of worry. You must promise me. Okay. After the memory, Ryu Min-seok received the supplies, thinking, Dami was right. If my true identity were exposed here, everyone would be engulfed in fear and go mad. Ryu Min-seok carried the goods back and softly called, Dami, I'm home. By then, Ryudami had fallen into a deep sleep without him noticing when. He gently pulled a blanket over her. Suddenly, his expression tightened. Why was that? Ryu Min-seok rewound images of zombies from recent days. The rate at which they appeared in phases had become alarmingly fast. Over 100 had already surrounded the door, and mutated zombies appeared within just a week. Sitting beside his daughter, unease rose in him. Even in the previous 99 times, he'd never seen such a terrifying speed, and that made the situation a variable. The biggest question in his mind was why the zombies had changed like this. I have a bad feeling. His face darkened. Night had fallen over the entire city. In a forest, the image of a zombie with a long, disgusting tongue appeared. Ryu Min-seok felt as if he'd discovered something. He sensed that they were looking for him, a zombie with many limbs that looked horrifying. Behind it were a line of other zombies. They wanted to kill him and Dami. A swarm of zombies gathered together. He was puzzled. Could it be that the existence of me and my child irritated them, or made them afraid? I don't know. But one thing I'm sure of. One of the zombies began to scream loudly. It was me also a variable to them, and suddenly all the zombies looked in one direction. Ryu Min-seok had appeared here somehow. He moved closer to them, looked around once. All the zombies in this area had gathered together good. He slammed the ladder down onto his hand. His gaze was cold as he looked at the zombies. Then I don't need to search anymore. They opened their foul-smelling mouths toward him, looking as if they wanted to devour him alive. Ryu Min-seok casually said, What are you still standing there for? Start moving. He lifted the ladder. Before my daughter wakes up. Without much effort, he snapped it in two. Fired up and determined, he declared, I have to go cook first. No sooner had he finished than the many-limbed zombie quickly lunged forward. The rest of the group followed and ran up after it. Before they could reach Ryu Min-seok, one of them was struck hard in the neck by him. The force was so great its head immediately separated from its body. He moved like the wind. Each punch cracked a skull wide open. Each kick sent a body flying off the ground. Suddenly a zombie lunged and bit hard into Ryu Min-sok's shoulder. With that force, his arm was torn off from his body. He kicked it hard, sending it flying away. Ignoring the lost arm, he leaped high. From the wound, a new arm began to grow. His eyes filled with killing intent. His hand clenched tight. As he fell, he swung a fist that smashed the zombie into a motionless pulp. Suddenly, a swarm of zombies rose out of the ground, their bodies like meter-long worms. They surrounded Ryu Min-sok, mouths wide open, oozing purple fluids. Then an explosion occurred, hurling them to one side. From the center of the blast, he jumped high, both hands gripping 2 iron bars. When his feet hit the ground, those zombies returned to the earth. From behind his back, he produced 2 axes. Ryu Min-sok cut through the zombies in a single sweep. In the end, only that many-limbed zombie remained. Before it could make a move, he stomped right on its face. It screamed in agonizing pain. Ryu Min-sok killed it with a single slash. The next morning, in the supermarket, Ryu Dami still lay sleeping there. She began to stir awake, drowsy. She stretched after a good sleep. Her eyes glanced upward. Ryu Min-sok had changed into clean clothes and looked gently at his daughter. "My princess, you're up." He set the food down. "Here, eat quickly." He gently asked Ryu Dami, "You must be hungry, right?" She looked at her father a bit dazed. After regaining her senses, her eyes now filled with happiness. Yes, a fresh morning with sunlight streaming around them. In Cha Hae-ri's office, her angry voice carried, "Hey, are you kidding me?" The sergeant reported to her, "I'm telling the truth from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. There were loud noises. The captain heard them too." According to him and this morning's reconnaissance results, all the zombies in that area were wiped out. Cha Hae-ri angrily slammed the table. "Do you think that story is believable? You mean they just slaughtered each other?" The sergeant awkwardly explained, "I find it hard to believe too. But I saw it with my own eyes." Cha Hae-ri's mind was full of confusion. How could such a horde be annihilated in just 4 hours? What the hell is happening? Suddenly she noticed a device on the table. Her eyes flashed. "Wait, don't tell me." Cha Hae-ri ordered, "Assemble everyone." The sergeant, puzzled, asked, "Yes, ma'am." Her expression was serious. "From now on, we officially commence the operation to escape Amart." A man pressed his face to the glass, eyes wide in astonishment. "It's real." Outside the glass, the city was left in ruins, burned out cars, dried blood splattered everywhere, but there wasn't a single zombie in sight. Really? Not a trace of those bastards. Have they truly disappeared? Everyone stared at one another in stunned confusion. I heard it clearly. The soldiers whispered to each other. Those sounds were gone too. The zombies have really vanished. And when they realized it was true, everyone's emotions burst forth. We're safe now. Ryu Dami, who had been beside him, had also heard the news. She softly said to Ryu Min-suk, "Dad, maybe the zombies really are gone." He didn't reply, only quietly placed the helmet on his daughter's head. He warned her sternly, "Dami, listen to me carefully. Don't ever take that helmet off. Understand?" She looked puzzled. "Don't take it off." Just then, Cha Hae-ri and the soldiers entered. She raised the loudspeaker and announced in a strong voice, "This morning, for reasons unknown, all the zombies in the area were eliminated." Cheers erupted wildly. "It's true we're alive," Cha Hae-ri continued. "So from now on," frowning, she declared, "we will leave this place." The news was so big people couldn't process it immediately. Leave this place? The crowd's faces shifted, the earlier jubilation vanished. "Hey, did I hear that right?" Cha Hae-ri cleared her throat and explained, 3 days ago, just before we lost contact, we maintained contact with one unit, the 2nd Mechanized Infantry Brigade. Said to be the last surviving brigade in the Gyeonggi area, they still have battalion-level armored forces and brigade-scale manpower. Most importantly, they can take civilians. Hearing that, some people became even more alarmed. "You want us to leave based on a single radio signal? How do we know it's real?" Cha Hae-ri reassured them. "You don't need to worry, I know who sent that signal best." The nickname was Blue Hawk. Thinking of that, she breathed easier. If it's him, I can trust it completely. But her words weren't enough to calm the rising fear. Trust that monkey? Leave based on a signal that's been dead for 3 days? That's basically walking to our deaths. Seeing people unwilling to cooperate, Cha Hae-ri lost her composure. "We have to go, because if the zombies come back, we won't hold out." From the other side, a voice rose just as loudly. "No, I absolutely won't go anywhere. What if the zombies don't return?" A man spoke up to draw Cha Hae-ri's attention. "See, I knew this moment would come," he said bluntly. That kind of impulsive, reckless decision, would a man in charge decide like that? Offended, Cha Hae-ri cleared her throat. "What did you just say?" Just as the atmosphere was about to explode, a deep voice spoke up. "Not what everyone thinks. It was Ryu Min-seok. He was certain. The zombies will come back. The man from before turned to him and challenged, "Who are you to act like you know everything?" When Cha Hae-ri saw it was Ryu Min-seok, she gasped. An expert. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The claim startled them. An expert? He glanced at the man, causing him to falter slightly. To that man, Ryu Min-seok briefly seemed like a terrifying zombie. His voice grew ominous. "Staying here is like meat on a plate. Is that what you call living?" But in the blink of an eye, he returned to his usual appearance and tone, speaking normally again. "It's just counting down the days until you die." Only after Ryu Min-seok left did the man regain his breath. People still didn't trust him immediately. Another skeptical person approached and asked, "So, if we follow them, are we guaranteed to survive?" He answered indifferently, "Nothing is certain." Hearing that, the man loudly retorted in irritation, "See? Just talk, what can words do?" Ryu Min-seok raised his voice. "So now it's my turn to ask, what if we don't follow the army?" He asked the question that hit them hardest. Without the military, can any of you survive? Just one sentence was enough to make the atmosphere fall silent. Then whispers of agreement rose up. Looking back, Captain Cha was right. Yes, without soldiers we'd be doomed. Things began to turn for the better. Some people started voicing agreement. "Come on, we've survived this long thanks to the military." No one in the crowd objected anymore. They urged each other to try it, to trust them this once, to follow Captain Cha. Everything changed so quickly that Cha Hae-ri was stunned. He didn't need to exert force, just a few words, and he could change the people's minds. She glanced toward Ryu Min-seok. Suspicion rose in her heart. What kind of person was he? After all, catching her gaze, he only said lightly, "No need to thank me," which made Cha Hae-ri uneasy. "What? I wasn't going to say thank you." Ryu Min-seok recalled memories from before he had the strength to protect his daughter and smiled softly. "I'm used to convincing others in disadvantageous situations." Suddenly he reached out his hand. "After all, this is for my sake and my daughter's." He extended his hand toward Cha Hae-ri. He smiled. "I trust the captain. He'll definitely succeed." Hearing that, she paused for a moment, but she quickly returned to her original serious demeanor. She shouted into the loudspeaker, "The evacuation operation begins now. Cha Hae-ri, will save everyone." Cut 2. Everyone is now on vehicles preparing to leave the city. Buses carrying civilians were flanked and protected by military vehicles. Sitting on the bus, Ryudami still obeyed her father. She didn't dare remove her hat, but she sat next to a stranger. The soldiers were on high alert. Cha Hae-ri stood on the vehicle, her eyes scanning the distance. A whistle sounded. They had spotted a signpost. The sergeant driving glanced back and said to Cha Hae-ri, "It's been a long time since we crossed the Han River. It feels strange." She warned, "Stay focused." Her gaze fixed ahead. Everything was only just beginning. The passenger in the front seat suddenly shouted, "Sergeant Shin!" A zombie appeared in front of the vehicle. Then several more suddenly emerged and immediately charged toward the convoy. Over the radio, Cha Hae-ri informed everyone, "Zombies spotted. Commence engagement. Civilians and Team C on the right. We take the left. As planned, begin." The first trait of zombies is that they're more sensitive to sound than sight. Exploiting this, the soldiers scattered empty cans along the road to lure them. As expected, the zombies ignored the buses and ran toward the source of the noise. Everyone accelerated forward. "It's working, they're following this direction." Cha Hae-ri kept commanding, "Maintain distance, don't let them catch up." The sergeant looked worried. "But Captain, the number of zombies kept growing rapidly. We're about to be overtaken." She turned her head. "At this rate, we have to fall back to Seongsan Bridge." In moments they reached the bridge, but only a short span remained. The section ahead had collapsed. The second trait of zombies, Cha Hae-ri, prayed inwardly, "Just a little more. Hold on, they will charge at people in any circumstances." Cha Hae-ri shouted, "Now." The sergeant driving slammed on the brakes and swerved to the side. The zombies continued chasing at high speed, but because they were running so fast, they couldn't stop in time. They shoved each other and plunged straight into the river. Some that managed to stop in time were shot dead immediately. The gruesome, blood-soaked scene continued. They reacted by stopping their chase and staring fixedly at the vehicle ahead. The third characteristic of zombies, the lead one suddenly let out a loud scream, revealing that the weak spot was at the rear. Ryu Min-seok steered the vehicle and rammed into that zombie. He was fired up, charging forward with the road roller. Sitting atop it, Ryu Min-seok crushed the zombies under the roller. The road roller pulverized everything with tens of tons of force among heavy machinery. It was called a beast. Suddenly, two zombies on the road began to merge together. They had 4 glaring red eyes and grew larger. But that was nothing against the massive road roller. The rest still rushed in and were crushed as well. Witnessing the blood and the zombies' horrifying cries made Cha Hye-ri's group look terrified. Those not flattened to the road were flung into the river. With Ryu Min-seok's determined expression, the zombies had little chance of escaping. On Team 2's side, there wasn't a single zombie in sight on the road. Sitting in the vehicle, Ryu Dami nervously clutched her backpack. Her gaze sank with confusion. What was happening? Before boarding, the two had a small argument. She angrily asked Ryu Min-seok why he insisted on doing that, and he quietly reassured her that no one else could do it but him, and that someone would be by his side, so she shouldn't worry. Glancing around, she lowered her voice anxiously. What if the military notices something unusual about Dad? A voice interrupted her thoughts. Captain Cha's team has returned. Then her father's face came to mind. Before leaving, he had said, "Don't worry, I'm only supporting them." Ryu Min-seok waved to his daughter. "Dad, absolutely do not reveal anything." At first, Ryu Dami was worried, thinking everyone would be injured, but seeing them safe and hearing her father say he was only helping, while he drove the blood-splattered road roller, left her truly stunned. Cha Hye-ri nearby suddenly shouted, "Stay close behind." The driver, confused, still obeyed. "Yes, sir." It turned out a horde of zombies was charging ahead. The road roller plowed forward and crushed them all. They couldn't struggle for long and soon expired. On the vehicle, everyone cheered. Spirits high. We'll break through in one push. A short while later, the convoy drove out of the city. The sergeant sitting on the road roller's roof grinned. "Captain Cha," he happily shouted. "We did it." At 1845, the entire unit arrived at the 2nd Mechanized Infantry Brigade. Ryu Min-seok recalled memories from his past life. The 2nd Mechanized Infantry Brigade, remembered for surviving long due to solid leadership, was a mandatory checkpoint to pass to reach Daejeon, one of his strategic strongpoints. Ryu Min-seok now felt relaxed. It took only 8 days to get here, moving at a pace like racing the enemy. But the frown on his brow didn't disappear. He reminded himself not to let his guard down, even though he was stronger now if he acted recklessly. The image of his daughter from his previous life surfaced. His heart tightened. Damn, he might be in danger. He sketched out a plan in his mind. He would stick to the route proven safe before. From now on, it was truly the beginning. The sergeant on the roller shouted down to Ryu Min-seok. "Excellent work, expert. To be honest, I was a bit worried when you joined us. But thanks to you, everyone survived." The man sitting behind him asked curiously. "Finding the vehicle was easy, but who dares drive it? Did you work in construction before?" He smiled lightly and replied, "No, I just learned. The more you know to survive, the better." The convoy stopped. Luckily, we made it to safety. Cha Hye-ri relaxed and shifted, whispering, "Yeah, thanks." Ryu Min-seok moved closer, smugly asking, "What did you say just now?" She replied coldly, "Yeah. You're still pretending not to understand. I meant later." Annoyed, she snapped at him, "Be quiet." Suddenly, a voice rang out. "A warm welcome to Captain Cha Hye-ri. I'm Sergeant Lee In-hui, platoon leader of Battalion 1, 2nd Mechanized Brigade." He and another man saluted her on command. "We've been waiting for you." Cha Hye-ri returned their salute, suspicious. "You know me?" Lee In-hui answered. "Yes, we were notified beforehand that with your ability you'd arrive today. That was Colonel Cha's word." Cha Hye-ri was stunned. "Colonel Cha?" "Yes." She was a little moved, but his next remark made her bristle. There would be a very stubborn female soldier, causing chaos everywhere. The soldiers laughing at Cha Hye-ri fell silent under her glare. She growled, "Where is the colonel now?" By Ryu Min-seok's side, he was soothing his angry daughter. The sergeant continued, He just arrived at the rear gate. There are zombies there." The remark made her startle. She anxiously asked, "Is Colonel Cha handling it personally, or is he leading troops?" Lee In-hui said nonchalantly, "No." Cha Hye-ri sighed in relief. Of course, given the colonel's age. But before she finished, he shook his head. "No, that's not it." He hesitated slightly and glanced to the side. In his mind, he recalled the scene at that moment. He remembered the colonel hoisting a weapon, charging at the zombies with fierce spirit, hesitating slightly as he said, "Colonel, go alone." At the brigade's rear gate, 2 soldiers were on guard. One glanced at his watch. 35 minutes, 27 seconds. They shouted off into the distance, "Sir, you've set a new record." The other man responded with a quiet, "Oh." He had smashed a zombie on the ground. "For me, an axe beats a gun any day." He broke into a look of pure satisfaction. With an axe in one hand and a severed zombie head in the other, his expression contemptuous, he watched the zombies as if they were entertainment. Chopping them feels great, right? He was the commander of a combined special forces unit, and now led the 2nd Mechanized Infantry Brigade, the Blue Hawk Colonel Cha Pung-ho. The soldiers called out, "Next time use a gun, sir, we're still here. What if you get bitten?" Hearing them, he laughed louder. I'm Cha Pung Ho. How could this trash bite me? Are you joking? Then he locked eyes with the zombie head. Someone at his level could size them up at a glance. Colonel Cha's eyes never left it, assessing their power levels. He chuckled. And what help are you weaklings? Ridiculous. The two men, seemingly used to him and a bit helpless, replied, Try to be more careful with what you say, sir. They were angry but knew he was right, so they couldn't argue. Down below, Cha Pung Ho rubbed his shoulders. Oh, my back. They say old age spares no one, so true. He rolled his eyes. Is there really no one strong out here besides this bunch of trash? I heard everything. Suddenly, a zombie that wasn't completely dead staggered up and caught his attention. Huh. But he replied indifferently, What is it? You're still alive. One of its arms had been severed, yet it still growled and lunged at him. Before anyone could react, a massive road roller thundered up from behind and crushed it. The two soldiers gaped at the scene, mouths wide. What the hell was that? This made Cha Pung Ho, who had been gearing up to fight, freeze in place. His eyes filled with caution. Someone at my level can size everything up at a glance. The one who stepped down was Ryu Min-sok, but in Cha Pung Ho's eyes he no longer looked human. His power level was something else. Ryu Min-sok smiled warmly and introduced himself. Hello, I came with Captain Cha Hae-ri. My name is Ryu Min-sok. I heard there were zombies here, so I came to see if I could help. As soon as he finished introducing himself, Cha Pung Ho's face filled with killing intent, and he swung his axe toward Ryu Min-sok. He reacted quickly. The two soldiers panicked and shouted, Commander, what are you doing? That person is a civilian. Then the two suddenly froze. What the? With one hand, Ryu Min-sok had caught Cha Pung Ho's axe. Seeing this left the two soldiers stunned. He could do that? They shouted to Cha Pung Ho, Commander. But he barked back. You get inside now. Trigger code red immediately. Looking at those unusual red eyes, he was certain. This one is a monster. Ryu Min-sok sighed. Colonel Cha Pung Ho. Hearing his name, the colonel gritted his teeth. What did you say? With a light motion, Ryu Min-sok crushed Cha Pung Ho's axe. His voice was firm. I will definitely stay here. And to do that I must persuade you. The axe head flew up into the air, but mere words probably wouldn't be enough. Despite Cha Pung Ho's still dazed expression, Ryu Min-sok went on. Then I'll introduce myself in the way the colonel likes best. Cha Pung Ho was terrified. Ryu Min-sok clenched his hand into a fist. His whole body went into a ready stance, prepared to show the colonel who he was. Cha Pung Ho's tone deepened, and his gaze hardened. You mean you want to fight me one-on-one? He dropped his usual joking manner, face hardening at my age. I've never seen someone crazier than you. The clang of gear came as he stripped off all his protective equipment. You think I would? His knuckles cracked as he clenched his hands. He glared at Ryu Min-sok, amused by the foolish talk. All right then. Before he finished, Cha Pung Ho leaped high into the air. His heavy fist came down like a hammer toward Ryu Min-sok. Let's see what you're made of, he sneered. See how long you last. At that moment, the base alarm blared. Code red. Code red civilian personnel. Proceed to the shelters immediately. Cha Hae-ri stepped forward to stop and question the two soldiers who had run up. Is it code red? What's going on? They were panicked. I don't know that either. I'll explain later. For now, everyone follow the instructions. From behind, someone approached and quietly asked, You're Captain Cha, right? She immediately recognized him. Ah, Captain Kwok, he said. If it's you, maybe you can explain. But his voice caught as the other man leveled a gun at Cha Hae-ri. She frowned. What are you doing? He snapped. A monster attacked the commander at the rear gate, naming her correctly. She froze and asked back, A monster? What are you talking about? He growled. Ryu Min-sok, that's the name he gave. She demanded, Tell me, who is he? Hearing that name, everyone fell silent. Ryu. Unlike everyone else's shock, Ryu Dami's face went pale. Ryu Min-sok over here, he called, waving his hand forward. A powerful punch shot straight at Cha Pung Ho, but he quickly dodged. The earth and rocks crumbled. Cha Pung Ho glanced over and clicked his tongue. Look at that. One punch and the wall was smashed to pieces. He gritted his teeth and swung a leg at Ryu Min-sok while shouting, Yet you still say it. Are you even human? Ryu Min-sok crossed his arms to block the blow, his expression unchanged. Suddenly, he vanished. A moment later, he reappeared unexpectedly behind Cha Pung Ho. He used all his strength, trying to dodge Ryu Min-sok's attack. It seemed his strike would have hurt Cha Pung Ho, but the punch veered off in another direction. This caused Cha Pung Ho to hesitate for a moment. A few seconds later, he regained his rhythm and immediately punched back at Ryu Min-sok's face. Seeing him hit, Cha Pung Ho froze. Then he stepped forward and grabbed Ryu Min-sok by the collar. He snarled angrily, word by word. Are you mocking me? His eyes were bloodshot. That last punch, were you holding back? Huh. Are you going easy on me? Ryu Min-seok replied calmly. Yes. Cha Peng-ho was stunned. What? This kid is really insolent. Ryu Min-seok's face darkened. What if I had really hit? He looked indifferently at Cha Peng-ho. The colonel might already be dead. Hearing that, Cha Peng-ho fell into contemplation. His pupils contracted. Yes. From the moment he began fighting this guy until now, every cell in his body was screaming. When he faced Ryu Min-seok, he felt diminished by the overwhelming gap in strength. He pointed at Ryu Min-seok and clenched his teeth, shouting, What? What do you want from me? Ryu Min-seok looked up with determined eyes. I want to be protected. Cha Peng-ho burst into a loud laugh at that. In an instant, his expression grew serious. Ridiculous. Are you insane? A monster like you asking to be protected? But his gaze changed when he heard Ryu Min-seok's hoarse explanation. No. His eyes became sincere. The person who needs protection isn't me. It's Ryudami. But he didn't know an argument was happening on the other side. The girl was making a scene with the soldiers over there, my daughter. He felt diminished by the overwhelming gap in strength. Saying that, Ryu Min-seok immediately knelt down. If you allow it, he knelt with full sincerity. His voice was resolute. I am willing to do anything for you. Night fell. In the civilian reception room, people buzzed and whispered, You heard? Yeah, they say he's a monster. The main character of the kaiju story, Ryu Min-seok, ever since the supermarket he seemed strange, and those frightening eyes, they say he lacks melanin. Think about it. Zombies have red eyes too. Someone fretted, could he really be a zombie? The zombie everyone was talking about was currently sitting quietly in the holding cell. The corner of Ryu Min-seok's eye drooped. He felt fortunate good. His hands and feet were tightly bound. Remembering what Cha Peng-ho said this afternoon, he agreed. The people you bring here, we'll let them stay at the brigade. Then he pointed at Ryu Min-seok. But the problem is, how am I supposed to trust someone as dangerous as you? Ryu Min-seok made a request. Isolation. Cha Peng-ho asked in confusion. Isolation. Ryu Min-seok nodded. If you don't trust me, please lock me in a solitary room. Back in the present, he was determined. No matter how long it takes, I will prove that I am not a threat. Moonlight streamed through the window, its gentle light entering the room. Loneliness and silence did not lessen his resolve. I am completely harmless. Suddenly there were voices outside. He looked up and saw his daughter's radiant face. Tada. Ryu Min-seok worriedly asked, Dami, are you okay? She replied casually, Me? Of course I'm fine. She smiled reassuringly. The alert has been lifted. The soldiers here are kind, and I was even allowed out. In the shelter, Ryudami was criticized by others, but she lied to put him at ease. It was very cramped down there. Ryu Min murmured, Sorry, dear. She frowned in confusion. Huh. He avoided her gaze. I promised I wouldn't reveal it, yet I broke that promise again, Dami. Recalling his daughter's worry before departing, Ryu Min-seok hesitantly asked, Were you very disappointed? But Ryudami lightly tapped his head with her hand. She encouraged him. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have made it here safely. Then she gave a bright smile. So hold your head up, Dad, no matter what others say to me. Ryu Min-seok just listened, stunned. You have always been the one I trust most. He smiled gently at Ryudami. Then she glanced at her watch in a panic. I have to go, there's a 10 o'clock roll call, and I'll be scolded if I'm late. She waved goodbye to Ryu Min-seok. Good night, Dad, he replied softly. Yeah, Dami. You sleep well too. He watched his daughter's figure as she left. At first, Ryudami still wore a smile. So did Ryu Min-seok. He silently gazed at the night sky. But after a moment, Ryudami's face began to redden with tears. She slowed to a run, and tears fell to the ground. Stopping at a place far from her father's cell, she burst into sobs. In such a quiet space, Ryu Min-seok could, of course, hear his daughter's cries. Guilt filled his face. Suddenly, heavy footsteps sounded from outside. He quickly straightened up as someone called, Ryu Min-seok. Lee and Hui stood before him and solemnly announced, Commander wants to see you. Cut to another scene. Cha Peng-ho pointed to a location on the map, Gupa Ball Station, where many survivors were. Holding up a frequency chart, he said gravely, 20 minutes ago, part of Gupa Ball Station collapsed. The sound detector picked up multiple survivor frequencies inside the wreckage. He raised the frequency chart. Besides that, there was something of unknown origin, a very strange frequency. He looked at Ryu Min-seok and continued, The key to this mission is ultra-fast mobility. Moving in large groups will hinder rather than help, so I'll choose the most elite option to act. Then he pointed to himself. Me and... He raised a finger and pointed in one direction. His lips curved slightly, as he then pointed directly at Ryu Min-seok. You, Cha Peng-ho said sternly. You said it yourself. Didn't you do anything for your daughter? Now can you prove that? As soon as he finished speaking, Ryu Min-seok casually swept his hand and shattered the chains bound around his wrists. The two soldiers flinched and looked at him. Then he called out loudly to Cha Peng-ho. When do we depart? The corner of Cha Peng-ho's mouth twitched into a sly smile. The two of them stared at each other with killing intent. He answered curtly. Right now. The Goopaball Station rescue operation begins. As night fell in a certain neighborhood, the scene was desolate and bleak, everything heavily damaged, surrounded only by rubble. The streets below were littered with countless debris, as if the place had suffered severe losses. In the silence, a sound suddenly rang out. A booba, the babble of a child. Its face and clothes were smeared with dust, its eyes clear and innocent. The child lay in its mother's arms. With them were many others sitting in long rows along the road, all looking exhausted. The child cheerfully called, Babuba, Abba. It gently touched the man beside it and babbled as if to speak to him. Booba. The mother, embarrassed, admonished. Dione. Don't, dear. The man scowled at the mother and child. Another person pointed at the child and snapped irritably. Good heavens, so noisy. In this stifling situation, it's maddening. The mother fell silent and endured. A woman, outraged, spoke up for the mother and child. Oh please, what do kids know? Don't be like that. The other person clicked his tongue and let it go. The mother, flustered, apologized. The child couldn't understand and looked up at the sky innocently. Suddenly the child saw something. It called to its mother, pointing upward. Mama. The mother looked at the child, puzzled. Huh? The child continued calling, Mommy, but before it could finish, someone cut it off. The mother clutched her child, face pale with fear, while the child still gazed upward innocently. Above where they sat, something hazy emerged from the darkness. On closer look, it was a sallow face, with deep-set eyes smiling down. Suddenly its expression shifted. It widened its eyes to reveal blazing red irises, its skin wrinkled and ashen, and its mouth gaped, filled with sharp teeth. Zombies appeared everywhere on the streets, monstrously grotesque, emitting terrifying sounds as they moved. Peng-ho's voice rang out. See, Min-seok, my vehicle isn't any worse than your steamroller. He smiled smugly. Min-seok replied indifferently. Uh-huh. The two rode in the same vehicle, Peng-ho driving while Min-seok scanned positions. The vehicle hurtled through the wind, plowing through zombies in its path. Peng-ho complained. The steamroller has heavy firepower but moves slowly. Ugh, so annoying. Right now, speed is life. Peng-ho signaled with two fingers and explained seriously. There are two factors, or variables. First, burial and entrance has collapsed and the subway tracks are blocked. According to Peng-ho's memory, the tracks are now obstructed by rubble and unusable. Peng-ho continued. And the second factor, it's this one. He pointed to a spot on the screen. It displayed oscillation streams and the information needed to assess the situation. Peng-ho continued. An unidentified individual is inside an enclosed space with the survivors. He stated solemnly. That means even a 1-second delay is unacceptable. Min-seok watched the screen intently and suddenly noticed something. Min-seok pointed to the area being recorded on the screen and suggested that Goopaball has fairly wide ventilation ducts and, he heard, their condition is still somewhat intact. We'll enter through the ventilation shafts and break in below, then quickly rescue the survivors. That's the focus of this operation. Min-seok outlined his plan, which sounded convincing. Peng-ho was adamant. Everyone still in there must be rescued. Not a single person left behind, understood? Min-seok replied bluntly, dousing Peng-ho's fervor. No. Peng-ho was stunned to hear that. Min-seok said thoughtfully. This operation will fail. Peng-ho frowned at Min-seok and asked angrily, What the hell are you talking about? Min-seok replied wearily. The rescue at Goopaball Station. Each time the timing varies slightly, but the events always play out the same. The colonel always proposes the best plan. Peng-ho was bewildered and speechless. The iPad screen went dark. Min-seok set the device aside. He asserted gravely. Yet up to now, the number of people rescued is 0. Elsewhere, the mother had fainted, her face contorted as if in pain. The mother gradually came to and slowly opened her eyes. She realized she was hanging upside down, her legs bound by dense strands of silk, and many others around her were in the same state. They were suspended in place. The mother cried out in confusion, Huh? Why am I like this? What is happening? The mother was stunned and couldn't understand. She tried to recall, then realized something. She frantically looked around, screaming for her child. Da-yoon, where are you? She struggled until the strand snapped and she tumbled to the ground. Despite the pain, the mother kept calling her child, Da-yoon. Others were waking up too. Some managed to get down. Hearing the mother's cries, someone anxiously asked, "Are you okay, miss?" The mother didn't answer, only continued calling, "Choi Da-yoon." The other person asked confusedly, "Choi Da-yoon?" Meanwhile, a man still trapped in the strands shouted, "Hey, untie me first." The mother recognized the man as the one who had earlier interacted with her. Thinking he knew her child, she called out loudly, "Sir, you know my Da-yoon, right?" "Have you seen Da-yoon?" The man snapped irritably. "What do I know? I don't even know why I'm like this." He lost patience and shouted angrily, "Do something, get this off me now." Suddenly, another person appeared beside him, the woman who had defended the mother and child, crawling on the thick web. Her face darkened with a strange expression. The man grew uneasy and warily asked about the meddlesome woman. "What are you doing there?" The woman looked up and smiled. Her eyes were narrowed and glowing an eerie crimson. Then the woman's face contorted. Her eyes bulged, her skin turned wrinkled and ashen, and her mouth opened wide. She then lunged forward and swallowed the man's entire head. The man screamed in pain. "Are you insane?" Those below who witnessed the horrific scene were terrified, faces ashen. His cries continued, "Please stop, stop." Then the sound fell silent. The man collapsed and slowly got to his feet. But he was no longer human. His face had become distorted, his skin turned purplish, and one side of his head was mangled. The others turned deathly pale with fear, sweating from the tension. A young man shouted, "Zombies!" No sooner had he shouted than the zombie lunged and bit the young man's head. Others swarmed in, and everyone panicked and ran for their lives. Someone cried out in panic, "No way, zombies here." Another replied, "I don't know, just run." The man cursed in helplessness, "Damn, where can we run?" Amid the chaotic crowd, the mother kept sobbing for her child. "Da-yoon, Da-yoon," someone shouted. "All the exits are blocked." Suddenly the mother heard a familiar voice calling, "Ma." She froze and listened, searching for the source of the voice. The sound led to a dark basement. Sensing her child, the mother rushed down to find him. A young man who saw her acting strangely called out, "Hey, what are you doing going down there? The tracks are blocked too." Another man ran over and shouted, "Son, what are you standing there for? Come here now." The young man's expression changed. Terrified, he screamed, "Dad, look ahead." From above, a zombie leaped down and attacked them. Despite the chaos outside, the mother kept frantically searching for her child. In her head, she could only hear her child's voice, "Booba." She kept repeating, "All right, Da-yoon, I'm coming," the sound echoing in her ears. "Abba, Mama," the mother cried urgently in her heart, forcing herself to run as fast as she could toward the sound. "I'm coming. I'll be right there." Finally, the mother reached the end of the tunnel. She called anxiously, "Da-yoon, my child." But dashing her hopes, what lay in the basement was something else. The worst had happened. Her child had turned into a zombie. It retained the shape of a child but was large-bodied, skin pale with black veins, its mouth full of sharp teeth, eyes glowing red as it coldly looked down at the mother. It had many legs like a spider and held a headless body in its hands, apparently mid-meal. Then the zombie wailed and emitted horrifying sounds, "Mommy mama," leaving the mother stunned, staring at the scene. Her gaze went blank, unable to accept what was happening. The mother denied it. "No, this can't be. It's all lies. Yes, this must be a dream," she thought. But the zombie seized the mother, opened its jaws wide, and began to swallow her head. Feeling powerless, the mother could do nothing. She uttered her last words in despair as a terrible nightmare unfolded. But suddenly the zombie burst into flames, a horrific explosive eruption. It screamed in agony. The mother was released. She stood there, stunned, looking at what lay before her. Flashback, Min-seok told Pung-ho. "I tried everything I could, but I couldn't save anyone." He hesitated as he explained, meaning that. Min-seok pondered and looked back at Pung-ho. He continued, "By normal human means, there's nothing that can be done." Back in the present, Min-seok appears to save the mother. He stood before her, his body radiating bright flames in the dark basement. Min-seok looked down coldly. It was Ryu Min-seok, the information. Dami's father, the characteristic, not human. The zombie, human-like in appearance but with sharp teeth and glowing red eyes, was a skinwalker, the one who wears human skin. The zombie group has these traits. They hunt by knocking humans unconscious, then they continue by impersonating human faces. At that moment, Min-seok was engulfed in flames. His body was smeared with mud, and he was a high-level spider-type creature. Despite many wounds, Min-seok did not step back. He pressed his lips together and faced the zombie coldly. The skinwalker opened its jaws wide, baring sharp teeth. It let out a terrifying roar and spat a stream of liquid directly at Min-seok. As the liquid approached, Min-seok did not dodge. He stood motionless in place. The skinwalker puffed its cheeks, manipulating the liquid to attack its opponent, but immediately after, it was suddenly knocked to the ground. Min-seok thrust his fist forward. In other words, its weak point would be at. He drove his punch hard into the zombie's head. The skinwalker screamed in furious pain. Burn it with fire, giving it no time to fight back. Min-seok's eyes lit up, his jaws clenched, and then it was over in a single blow. After dealing with the opponent, Min-seok rubbed his head and glanced at a paper falling nearby. A weak cry suddenly rang out. Don't. A woman, tears streaming, begged Min-seok in agony. My son, please don't hurt my son. Min-seok suddenly realized something. He glanced in surprise at the zombie he had just felled. The skinwalker opened its mouth and howled. It attacked Min-seok once more. The woman dropped to her knees, mouth agape in disbelief. Her eyes rolled back as she stared at the scene. Min-seok stepped back, and the woman suddenly collapsed to the ground. He propped one hand on the ground, grinding his teeth in anger. The skinwalker bared its sharp teeth and lunged wildly at Min-seok. Min-seok bent slightly forward, and a fierce blaze suddenly erupted. He opened his mouth and stared coldly straight ahead. Min-seok's eyes narrowed slightly. Ryudami's words flashed through his mind. No matter what others say, I will always trust you, Dad. Gritting his teeth, Min-seok forced himself up, remembering his daughter's encouragement. So lift your head, Dad. But Min-seok slammed his head hard into the ground, the earth beneath crumbling. Fresh blood streamed from his head without stopping. The skinwalker's red eyes widened as it let out a loud cry. Then it started to whimper. At that moment, a tremendously powerful punch struck the zombie's jaw. Fresh blood began to spurt from the skinwalker's wound. Tears ran continuously from the skinwalker's eyes. As he attacked, Min-seok said, No, you're wrong. The skinwalker took another punch to the face. Screams and children's cries continued to echo. The zombie fell to the ground in pain. Right after, an elderly face appeared, tears streaming down. Min-seok said in disgust, Those children's cries are disgusting. That's not the sound you should be making. He looked down from above and declared coldly, From now on, the only thing that should come from your mouth. Min-seok's gaze radiated contempt and anger. It should be a scream. As soon as he finished speaking, the zombie screamed again. Min-seok spread his arms, and teeth clenched, attacked it. Outside, hiding behind a door, two terrifying zombies seemed to have noticed something and kept screaming. Behind the door, a group of people were straining to hold the door shut against the zombies. Block them. Quickly block them. A terrified voice suddenly rang out. If they break the door down, we're dead for sure. Inside, everyone was terrified, yet they all tried to hold the door closed. A young man wearing a hat still found it hard to believe. He asked suspiciously, But are those real zombies? They don't make any sound, and their faces are twisted and horrifying. The man next to him snapped, Shut up and do your best to hold the door. At that moment, something appeared that caught the man's attention. The others began to panic. What is that? It's smoke. Something's burning. I can't breathe. Someone immediately clutched their head, turned pale, and said, We're doomed. We're all going to die. The man in white shouted, Stop talking nonsense. The young man beside him suddenly called out, Dad. Hearing his son call, he angrily turned and asked, What now? The young man continued, Can't you feel it? The young man said in disbelief, They've seemed to have stopped. Immediately after, the door suddenly collapsed, revealing a narrow gap. Then it continued to fall apart before everyone's eyes. The hat-wearing young man stared wide-eyed and, frightened, said, The door fell, Dad. Hurry, lie down. But his father didn't react. He stood still and, incredulous, asked someone, Who are you? He even wondered aloud, What the hell is that? It turned out that by then, Min-seok had eliminated all the zombies outside, with zombie corpses piled in heaps behind him. Before the rescue team could reach Goopaball Station, the surrounding scene was utterly devastated, without a single person in sight. Blood was everywhere. Pung-ho's father looked coldly at the desolate scene before him. The soldiers behind him gaped at the sight as well. Pung-ho's father grinned, baring his teeth. After a search, the total number of survivors found was 37. A soldier thought to himself that in a completely isolated place, escaping the zombies seemed impossible. He was stunned to see what lay before him. A child still alive, wrapped in a cocoon, which meant nearly 40 people inside had been saved. The child, unaware of what had happened, laughed innocently. The soldier still found it hard to believe truly a miracle. Damie looked ahead at my father. She looked at the crowd cheering before her. Then she felt immense pride at having become the man who created a miracle. At that moment, Min-seok was wrapped in a blanket, smiling and waving to the others. The sergeant clapped and said, I always thought he was unusual, but this is truly amazing. Pung-ho's father applauded and laughed heartily. You passed the test perfectly. Min Seok suddenly noticed something beside him. He saw Dami walking toward him. Then he broke into a very gentle smile. Dami smiled back. She reached her hand forward. Then she embraced her father tightly. In another development, someone angrily kept shouting insults. How terrible. Lee In-hui carried a tray of medicine. After the mission, he kept coughing and slept. A lot. Could he be overworked? Saying that, he closed the door and went out. Sergeant, rest up. I'll bring medicine and food later. By then, the door was completely shut. The sergeant lying on the bed still hadn't regained consciousness. However, the veins on his neck seemed to be changing. The sergeant had turned into a zombie. Night fell, and the atmosphere grew more raucous. Everyone gathered around the campfire to eat. Men and women, young and old, children to middle-aged, all lost in drunken revelry, arms over shoulders, singing with joy. Joining the fun, Cha Peng-ho's hand grabbed a can of beer. It looked like he had just taken a long swig. As if he'd saved the world, Cha Peng-ho laughed heartily without stopping. Sitting next to him was Ryu Min-seok. Empty cans lay around them. Both had clearly drunk a lot. Cha Peng-ho proudly continued. From the first time I met you, I knew you'd do great things. His big hand reached out to clap Ryu Min-seok on the shoulder. His excitement undiminished. He hadn't expected him to do so well. Cha Peng-ho had never been this joyful before. It seemed he was starting to trust Ryu Min-seok more. He beamed and advised, "Keep it up, Ryu Min-seok." It looked like everyone had drunk too much, but Cha Peng-ho, in a calm tone, scoffed and said, "On a day like this, we should party hard, but let's keep it simple." Suddenly, a sound broke from his throat, as if he were trying not to cry. Cha Peng-ho's eyes grew sad as he looked toward the table of food and drinks scattered with white chrysanthemums. It felt like a bitter lump in his throat. If it's just us getting wasted, the ones who've gone before would be sad, right? But true to his nature, Cha Peng-ho wouldn't let himself show weakness in front of anyone. He raised the beer can toward Ryu Min-seok and invited, "Raise your glass for those who left this hell before us." Cha Peng-ho added, "And for us, the ones who will survive till the end." Observing his old friend's strong demeanor, Ryu Min-seok clinked cans with him in agreement. But Ryu Min-seok's gaze was drifting elsewhere. What was he thinking about? Not the type to keep things to himself. Ryu Min-seok cut in before Cha Peng-ho could drink more. "Why don't you ask me?" He blurted out the questions in his mind. "Why did I know your plan would fail? Why did I become such a monster? Aren't you curious?" Without hiding anything, Cha Peng-ho said, "I know it all." Which surprised Ryu Min-seok a little. Still with that habit, Cha Peng-ho drank and spoke in disjointed phrases that Ryu Min-seok couldn't make sense of. "I'm not interested in those stories." Cha Peng-ho hesitated, awkwardly saying, "It's strange to me." Cha Peng-ho's face lit up as if he'd seen the horizon. "What interests me is the will to save people from this hell, the people here." Seeing him smile like that, it seemed sincere. If he wanted to fake it, it would be hard to do. The camp remained noisy during the celebration. Cha Peng-ho's confidences were meant only for Ryu Min-seok, and that was all he needed. Buoyed by that support, Ryu Min-seok blurted, "Colonel, you haven't changed at all." Cha Peng-ho looked puzzled. Was he drunk? "What are you saying?" Ryu Min-seok deflected, "Nothing." Near the campfire, Ryu Dami was singing lullabies and playing with the child in the woman's arms. It was a peaceful scene. Cha Peng-ho spoke softly. "Ah, let me ask this." Ryu Min-seok replied, "What is it?" Cha Peng-ho's eyes showed mild curiosity, and he didn't hesitate to ask bluntly. "You said your destination was Daejeon, right? So why are you still here? With your ability, you would have arrived already if you hurried." Unable to reveal everything, Ryu Min-seok could only be vague. "Because I still have work to do at this brigade." Cha Peng-ho found it puzzling. Work. Ryu Min-seok choked as he recalled certain things. And his expression turned contemplative, lips pressed in regret. Fragments of the past surfaced. Ryu Min-seok's shocked gaze in the rain as he looked at a body matted with blood on the grass. "Each time I was reckless and hasty. The results were always disastrous." It was Ryu Dami, her appearance unbearably, tragic a zero, truly a horrific scene to forget. Hearing those cryptic words, it wasn't hard for Cha Peng-ho's curiosity to lead him to guess. "You're that thing, aren't you?" Even Ryu Min-seok hadn't expected him to notice. "How did you know?" Cha Peng-ho replied calmly. "You can tell just by looking." He resumed his triumphant smile, so Ryu Min-seok wouldn't overthink it. "The closest yet hardest to control beings in the world are children." Changing the subject immediately, Ryu Min-seok looked around to observe. "Oh, I don't see Captain Dad anywhere." Somehow Cha Peng-ho is silent. Like a gorilla loose from its cage, he downed a whole can of beer in one go, startling Ryu Min-seok. Ryu Dami stepped over to them. "Dad." Ryu Min-seok snapped out of his amusement. Ryu Dami's expression was a little embarrassed. "I'll go in first, I'm a bit tired today." Not comfortable letting his daughter go alone, He stood and turned to Cha Peng-ho politely. "I'll be right back." She protested shyly. "No, I'm not a child anymore." But Ryu Min-suk softened his tone. "It's very dark, let's go together." Watching the two of them's backs disappear, Cha Peng-ho remained silent and observant. His gaze stayed on Ryu Dami, a sheepish smile as he chatted with his eldest daughter, both touching and amusing to see. Leaning back, Cha Peng-ho remarked while continuing to enjoy his drink. "He can still make that face? After all, he's still a father." Closing his eyes in thought, he only smiled mysteriously. "Daejeon, huh?" In Cha Peng-ho's inner monologue. "Sorry, Ryu Min-suk, I can't let you go so easily. Thanks to you." His pupils narrowed dangerously. Cha Peng-ho's expression was as inscrutable as his nature. Watching the Ryu father and son leave, he sketched out another demand. "I can make a plan again." Cha Peng-ho's plan. The young soldier spoke up. "Commander, I thought the requested items had arrived." He smiled cheerfully. "Ah, the beer's here." Seeing the other's current state, the veins on Cha Peng-ho's forehead stood out. The young soldier stammered, "Co-commander, sir." He clutched his neck, looking pale and too afraid to speak. But finally the young soldier spoke up. "We have a big problem, sir. The thing closest in the world but hardest to control at this moment." The silence between Ryu Dami and Ryu Min-suk was unbearably awkward. He glanced furtively at his daughter with a pensive look. Recalling the colonel's words, "The thing closest in the world yet hardest to control is children." Seeing his eldest daughter always embarrassed when they're together, he wondered how to become closer to her. "Dami." Ryu Min-suk finally spoke first. He looked directly at Ryu Dami. "Dad wants to ask you something." His eyes were sad. In a plaintive voice he asked her, "Are you afraid of me?" Recalling the scene of himself covered in blood standing before her, Ryu Min-suk thought deeply though, now Dad looked completely different. But that smile, those eyes, there was no disgust or disdain in them. Yet Dami still accepted her father without hesitation. Worried and flustered, Ryu Min-suk asked, "Dami, don't you feel afraid of me?" "Yes." Just those two words from Dami left him speechlessly shocked. The next sentences pierced Ryu Min-suk's heart like knives. "Every day I'm scared one day you'll kill me." She bowed her head, her expression darkening, and said harshly, "But now, I can't pretend anymore." Tears streamed down Ryu Dami's cheeks as she sobbed and reproached. "Tell me, where is my real father?" That clenched jaw, those deep eyes full of fury, and the trailing tears that was hatred. Ryu Dami added another cutting line. "You monstrous fiend." "Dad." Ryu Dami touched his arm, waking Ryu Min-suk. It turned out the earlier scene was just a nightmare born of his worry. Seeing his daughter's timid expression, Ryu Min-suk felt embarrassed too. Ryu Dami pondered. "Dad, what were you going to say? What are you thinking about so intently?" Realizing the worst wouldn't happen, he relaxed. Ryu Min-suk forced a smile to reassure his daughter. "Ah, it's nothing." Disappointed she couldn't continue the conversation, Ryu Dami coughed and complained. "You're so boring, Dad." He, of course, noticed and asked, "Why are you coughing so much? Are you okay?" Taking the chance to act spoiled, she coughed again. "I don't know, it just won't stop." Ryu Min-suk worried. "My God, why won't you wear more clothes?" He gave a light smile. "Go inside, Dad will get some medicine." No sooner had he finished speaking than Ryu Min-suk's expression darkened. "Ryu Dami," he called to catch her attention. "Yes." Ryu Dami turned to her father. Suddenly Ryu Min-suk lunged toward his daughter, eyes like a hunting beast, as if he intended to tear her apart. Terrified, Ryu Dami could only panic and fail to dodge. Closing her eyes in fear, she screamed at the top of her lungs. But in the end, he merely snatched something out of the air and crushed it in his hand. Ryu Dami cried out, "Dad, what's wrong? What's happening?" Looking at the strange object in his hand, Ryu Min-suk was also puzzled. "This is..." Opening his palm revealed an insect, a mosquito, but its appearance was very odd. "A mosquito," he muttered in disbelief. Before they could fully recover, an announcement came through the base. "Code Black. Code Black initiated. This is bad. Evacuate immediately," the alarm continued. Back at the celebration, the young soldier's body began to contort right in front of the colonel. Cha Peng-ho was furious. He had been too lax in his vigilance. Everything finally erupted. The alarm blared while the young soldier suddenly stood upright. This was real, not a drill. His last shred of consciousness was gone. Bloodthirsty zombies had appeared in the 2nd Mechanized Infantry Brigade. Inside the brigade, a zombie outbreak was underway. Hearing this surprised Cha Peng-ho somewhat. Predators. He drank and wondered how Ryu Min-suk knew this. "I'm the one who gave him that name, you know." Growing more animated as he spoke, aided by drink, he sounded like he was telling a humorous story. "Predators. When I first saw him, with that big belly, I thought he was ugly. But after seeing that spider-like thing, wow, now the predators look kind of handsome. Ryu Min-suk explained. They've evolved. Each word from Ryu Min-suk was received carefully. Craftier, stronger. He said that, and took another sip of beer. Their threat to us, the words Ryu Min-suk had told the colonel earlier, had come true. At that moment, a new type of zombie disguised as a human lunged forward, preparing to tear Cha Peng-ho apart. It wouldn't stop. The zombie had lost its humanity, its eyes ravenous as it charged toward him. The image of Ryu Min-suk flashed in Cha Peng-ho's mind. That's why I chose this place. But who is this colonel? Urgently now, his chest rose to 230.5 kilograms strength, surpassing an entire brigade. Cha Peng-ho managed to seize the zombie's neck before it could rampage. Blue hawks circled the battlefield, for there Cha Peng-ho gripped the predator's face. His gaze was now like a southern brown bear's. Without any weapon, Cha Peng-ho tore off the unfortunate zombie's head with his bare hands' strength beyond imagination. His eyes were icy. The brigade's most formidable weapon, we have him. Seeing the mangled corpse lying in a pool of blood on the ground, the young soldiers were still horrified. Zombies appeared, and right inside the brigade, too. No time to waste, Cha Peng-ho ordered. You lot, get the civilians to the shelters now. Seeing the brigade soldiers trembling and indecisive, he snapped angrily. Hey, do you all want to die? Finally, they snapped to and began shepherding civilians to evacuate, no delays. The brigade troops quickly organized the civilians to leave. Everyone was terrified. Holding the head in his hand, Cha Peng-ho felt as if his pride was being mocked by these bloodthirsty creatures. This damned virus. How did it crawl into my own brigade? Suddenly he froze as if he'd discovered something. What is this? On the zombie's neck was a small, deep hole, as if burned by some creature this scar. Before he could speculate further, a blood-curdling scream drew Cha Peng-ho's attention. There were zombies. Suddenly a horde of zombies rushed in to attack the soldiers. How did they get in? Not letting them run rampant, Cha Peng-ho swung his foot and crushed a zombie's face. Before the brigade could be eaten, he kicked the zombie away. No time to rest, Cha Peng-ho grabbed a wooden plank and attacked. Of course, it was a finishing blow to the bloodthirsty creature. Unable to keep fighting unarmed, he ordered, You there? Go fetch my gear, and you, go find Ryu Min-suk. He shouted urgently, sounding on the verge of losing control. Hurry up. Yes, sir. Two soldiers rushed to obey while Cha Peng-ho held the line alone against the zombies. Gripping the plank as if to snap it, Cha Peng-ho roared, You bastards dare run wild, don't you know where you are? He stepped in and delivered a kick to a zombie's face, contorting it as blood splattered. Feeling insulted, Cha Peng-ho growled and claimed his territory. This is my domain. Then he felled another zombie. This is a kingdom, Cha Peng-ho said in a terrifyingly stern voice. With the commanding gaze of a field leader, he roared with authority. Cha Peng-ho had established it. A zombie was also finished when the plank pierced its throat. Spotting an opening, another zombie moved in to attack him, but its luck was no better than its comrades. Before it could do anything, Cha Peng-ho hurled the creature away, sending it crashing to the ground. But it seemed one man alone wasn't enough. With no time to rest, Cha Peng-ho's instincts alarmed him to danger all around. He managed to land another knockout blow to a zombie's throat. But the numbers were overwhelming. More zombies kept coming, and at this rate, Cha Peng-ho couldn't hold out. Gritting his teeth in frustration, he felt utterly powerless. He shouted orders like a final ultimatum, his expression dire. Code Black, everyone to the shelters. The colonel's terse command rang out. Everyone worried. Would he survive? At that moment, Ryu Min-suk was busy admonishing his precious daughter, touching the helmet. Dami, remember this. Don't take it off, understand? Ryu Min-suk said sternly. Ryu Dami was helpless. Everyone around was watching them. Dad. She was covered head to toe. He protected her like a child. How embarrassing, wasn't this a bit much? Suspecting Ryu Min-suk was hiding something, Ryu Dami probed. What is it? What kind of zombie is it? You know, right, Dad? He didn't hide it and answered. Mosky, very small, a mosquito-like type of zombie. If you're bitten, the incubation period can vary, but ultimately, you'll turn into a zombie. Ryu Min-suk continued to explain. Clenching his hands in helplessness, he too was stunned by the discovery. Surprisingly, it was the first time he'd seen this variant. Even in his previous life, he hadn't encountered it. Ryu Min-suk was furious to the point of losing control. Who cares? Urging himself not to give up. This isn't the time, Ryu Min-suk thought. If Dami dies, it's over. Ryu Dami worried. Dad. The more he thought, the worse it got. Ryu Min-suk concluded, The Mosky are gathering. They're only limbs, the main bodies are elsewhere. At the brigade, Cha Hae-ri was surprised by the report. What? The captain was a bit taken aback. Mosky. The soldier nodded and continued. Yes, they're thought to be mosquito-like zombies. Limit exposed skin as much as possible. This is expert advice from Ryu Min-seok. Hearing that name, Cha Hae-ri was resigned. The proud smile of Cha Pung-ho faintly appeared in her mind, but it was meant for Ryu Min-seok, showing he could be trusted. She clicked her tongue with concern. Not to be jealous would be a lie. She'd trust Ryu Min-seok this time. The operative asked, "What now?" Cha Hae-ri directed the troops. Cover skin as much as possible and immediately join the suppression team inside. Roger. The unit complied at once. She turned to the other soldier and asked, "Where is the colonel?" "Ah, about that." He hesitated. "Captain." From above, another soldier reported. He continued. "There's one zombie outside the brigade." Cha Hae-ri felt something was wrong. "Only one? Don't you know what's happening inside the brigade?" The soldier replied. "No, not that it's just the shape is strange." She tilted her head. "Its shape." The soldier fumbled inwardly. How to describe it? He turned his gaze outside the brigade, eyes showing fear. "A creature with tufts of hair growing from its crown, what is that?" "A toad, actually a zombified toad. It was ugly with an unnaturally wide, ear-to-ear grin, truly terrifying." The toad pursed its wrinkled lips tightly. Slowly its mouth began to open. What did this creature intend to do? Its mouth opened wide like a cosmic void, sending chills down their spines. From its body swarmed thousands upon thousands of mosquito zombies. This is bad. Realizing the imminent danger, the soldier's limbs went weak as he shouted, "Mosquitoes!" Its mouth is spewing a huge swarm of mosquitoes. What they had calculated was beyond prediction. Cha Hae-ri panicked. What? The number of mosquitoes streamed into the brigade like a torrent. The wall guard could only stand there and cry out in fear. Cha Hae-ri had no choice but to evacuate, and chose the safe option. "Everyone, get inside the building." But something made her hesitate. From above, a figure leaped down holding heavy weaponry. Who was that? With the power to spring that high, Cha Hae-ri couldn't believe her eyes. What? No way. Rewinding a few dozen minutes, the soldiers were begging and pleading. "Sir Ryu Min-seok." "No, he's stubborn and won't move." "I'm a civilian, you're the soldiers, aren't you?" Ryu Min-seok's gaze was unyielding. "I won't say it twice. I have to stay here. You can't blame him. His purpose is to protect Ryu Dami. After all, he's a father doing what he thinks best to protect his daughter." But then, Ryu Dami placed the protective helmet on her father's head. She reassured him. "Don't worry. Right now a lion can't even bite you, let alone a mosquito." Ryu Min-seok snapped. Ryu Dami. Seeing these pitiable people worried from lack of sleep, the child crying out of terror, Ryu Dami couldn't hold back. "I want everyone to live, but I can't do anything." Her trembling hand reached out toward him. Ryu Dami's pleading eyes and urgent tears. "But father, you can, please, father." Ryu Min-seok's foot slammed down on the tiled floor. The heavy weapon hit the ground in the same way. Aiming the flamethrower at the mosquitoes, Ryu Dami's words echoed in his head. "Go and save not only yourself, but everyone." Ryu Min-seok's gaze was strong now, no longer wild. He did everything for his daughter. Target: insects. Objective: extermination. Tactic: use fire. Immediately, flames spewed from his gun. Swallowing the mosque, would it succeed? Min-seok held a flamethrower in his hands. He unleashed a fierce stream of fire toward the mosquitoes ahead. The zombie frog stared at the flames before it. After being incinerated, the mosquitoes turned to ash, right in front of the monster. Min-seok glanced coldly downward. The frog looked straight at him. It crouched to gain momentum. Then it turned and fled. Min-seok ground his teeth in anger. He froze when he noticed something. Min-seok took off his helmet and jumped down below. Then he landed safely. Gritting his teeth and still carrying his weapon, Min-seok leapt onto a moving vehicle. He called out, "Captain Cha." Cha Hae-ri guessed. "Is that it?" She followed the fleeing frog with her eyes and said, "The thing that turned my whole brigade to ashes." Cha Hae-ri shouted, "And once more, you know how to kill that thing, right?" To that question, Min-seok affirmed firmly. "Yes." After receiving the answer, Cha Hae-ri focused on driving and reminded him, "Good. First, we have to deal with it. Then, steel yourself," she continued. "Because I have a mountain of questions to ask you." Cha Hae-ri leaned close to Min-seok. "And if you dare mock me again with lies." She drove while turning to threaten him. "I will absolutely never forgive you, understood?" Hearing that, Min-seok was silent as he looked at her. He pressed his lips together, cold and unspoken. Cha Hae-ri slammed her foot on the gas. The car sped forward. The scene shifted to a village, nestled in the mountains, shrouded in darkness with no sign of life. The zombie had fled to the entrance of a cave. It began to move deeper inside. The frog opened its mouth wide and started to croak. Its call echoed through the quiet space. It kept calling as if summoning someone. After a moment, a multitude of glowing red eyes appeared all at once. A giant zombie with a wide mouth and countless eyes stepped forward toward the frog zombie. This terrifying zombie was the slick entity, the host-type zombie. When it appeared, the frog zombie seemed highly agitated and leapt straight forward. Its main body usually lurked in dark places like caves or tunnels. The host-type zombie opened its mouth wide as if smiling, making it extremely hard to track. So what they needed was... Min-seok suddenly appeared at the cave entrance. His appearance left the host-type zombie stunned in disbelief, a perfect ambush. Min-seok reached out and grabbed the zombie frog. Immediately, countless mosquitoes spewed from its mouth, attacking Min-seok. The swarm formed a straight flight path toward its target. A large burst of flame appeared and instantly incinerated them. Cha-hae-ri knelt outside the cave. She aimed a flamethrower straight inside. Cha-hae-ri spoke into the radio. "Got it. I understand. Finish this completely." Another voice replied. "Roger. Captain." Cha-hae-ri knelt beside Min-seok and said, "I heard the brigade has moved into the sweep phase." Then she affirmed, "That means civilians and your daughter are safe." Min-seok listened in silence as the person beside him continued. "Even if incidents occur, they'll recover quickly thanks to extraordinary endurance, an endurance maintained only by strong leadership." Min-seok thought to himself, "That's the reason I joined Captain Cha Pung-ho's brigade." He smiled and said, "Thank you for telling me." Cha-hae-ri replied, "Forget it. In the end, you're the one who saved them." Outside, soldiers continued to use flamethrowers to eliminate foes. The reason suppression was so quick was the precise initial response. As far as I know, the accurate judgment came from specialist Ryu Min-seok. Cha-hae-ri felt puzzled. "How do you always know so much?" Min-seok cut her off. "This isn't over yet." He looked toward the cave and added, "If we don't kill the host, the brigade will fall into danger again." Min-seok coldly reminded the woman beside him, "So, save your questions for later. The important thing now is to take it down." Cha-hae-ri pulled her scarf up to cover her face, stood, and asked, "So I'll be the one blocking its escape?" Min-seok answered, "Yes, the key is to make absolutely sure it has no chance to flee." He rose to his feet along with Cha-hae-ri. But Min-seok's face was solemn. That alone wouldn't be enough. Min-seok explained, "Its most terrifying trait is rampant reproduction." He continued coldly, "They form an interconnected biological network. Even if you kill the host, as long as any fragment survives, the host will regenerate." Hearing that, Cha-hae-ri gasped. "So then, there's no way?" she said fearfully. Like before, Cha-hae-ri looked directly at Min-seok and guessed, "You must have a way, right?" Min-seok admitted frankly, "Yes." He raised his hand toward the cave. Then he slammed his fist down hard onto the ground. Immediately, a massive explosion occurred, sending smoke and dust billowing everywhere. The cave entrance was blocked off by fallen rocks. The host-type zombie and its brood watched the entrance warily. Min-seok asserted, "The way to stop its reproduction is very simple." He thought to himself, "Lock it in and kill it over and over until it stops." Min-seok said, "Perfect." He continued, "Because killing you with a single strike isn't enough to extinguish this rage." Min-seok remembered his daughter. He recalled how frail she looked when in danger. Min-seok grew even angrier. A fierce rage burned within him. Having said that, Min-seok charged straight into the zombies. With the cave entrance sealed, Cha-hae-ri could only wait outside. She felt extremely anxious. "What the hell is this? This is insane. What are you, Ryu Min-seok?" Cha-hae-ri recalled her earlier reaction. "So from today on, we have to follow and support Ryu Min-seok?" Cha Pung-ho, losing patience, spoke up. "You still don't understand? It's not that Ryu Min-seok joined this brigade," he affirmed. "He is the answer for humanity." At that moment, the radio on Cha-hae-ri's shoulder crackled with a voice full of worry. "Captain Cha, please respond. Please, Captain. Where are you?" Cha-hae-ri hurriedly replied. "What? What's happening?" Yet only silence followed. Cha-hae-ri shouted, "What's going on?" The scene shifted to the next morning. The sun was beginning to rise. A mud-covered arm suddenly pushed up from the rubble. Min-seok was crawling out of the cave. Inside, the zombies had been completely annihilated. Min-seok stretched out, bathing in the sunlight. He tried to move his hand. His arms were smeared with dirt from crawling out of the rubble. Min-seok looked ahead with a cold gaze. His face was streaked with dried blood. In another development at the camp, Cha-hae-ri stared wide-eyed at the scene before her. Before her and the others, Cha Pung-ho suddenly appeared, the brigade commander. Her eyes widened, mouth agape. she stammered. Hey, Hye-ri asked. Sir Colonel. Cha Peng-ho, with large hands scarred and bloody, nonchalantly reached into a bag of chips. One of his biceps was bandaged. His body was full of scratches and blood. He popped a chip into his mouth and, looking ahead, asked, What? Seeing her stunned expression, he teased, What's with your face? Did you see a ghost? Hye-ri was left speechless, even more bewildered. Hye-ri stepped forward to report the situation. No way on the radio just now, someone clearly reported the colonel was in danger. She recalled the message that the colonel was in danger and had been startled in alarm. What? Cha Peng-ho, chewing, looked up puzzled. Huh. Realizing this, he suddenly burst into a big laugh until tears welled at the corners of his eyes. So that's why you looked like that? Pretty fierce face. He laughed while remembering how she had gotten angry with him yesterday, clenching her fists. That kid jumped up at me yesterday just because I misspoke. The more he thought about it, the harder he laughed, his eyes narrowing against the sun. Yet now she worries I'll die, seems she does care after all. Hye-ri, teased and embarrassed, trembled with anger. A nearby soldier, incredulous, spoke up. The colonel single-handedly held back the zombies in the square? With no weapon, only his bare body? Her attention pulled by the soldier's words. She glanced around. The soldier continued. Thanks to that, all the civilians withdrew safely. Before them lay piles of zombie corpses, many badly mangled. Cha Peng-ho smiled confidently but looked slightly injured. He nearly died. He raised his bandaged arm. Perhaps that was when she heard the radio report. Anyway, I'm not as spry as I used to be. Cha Hye-ri pursed her lips and watched him chuckle. Part relieved and part angry at being teased, she turned away, huffing. An old monster, stupid to worry about him. Cha Peng-ho turned and said, I heard that, hey you. How dare you badmouth a superior like that? Suddenly Cha Peng-ho asked, Who did you come with? Confused by the question, she turned back. His face took on a serious, threatening look. Who are you, huh? You came alone? Where's Min-suk? He fired questions rapidly, a note of worry in his voice. What about that frog-like zombie, was it destroyed? Facing Cha Peng-ho's questions, she stayed silent, lips pressed, eyes dropping. She straightened and spoke seriously, repeating what the colonel had said yesterday. Cha Peng-ho was taken aback by her demeanor. He recalled how, sitting in his office chair yesterday, he had spoken sternly. Ryu Min-seok is the final answer for humanity. Her gaze shifted elsewhere, in a soft voice, as if she remembered that afternoon, when the beautiful sunset bathed everything. She stood there full of admiration and surprise while Cha Peng-ho enthusiastically waved, flashing his white teeth. Standing before Hye-ri and Peng-ho was Min-suk, shirtless, his body streaked with blood, looking striking against the sunset. He looked up with red-rimmed eyes, smiling confidently and gently despite being covered in wounds and blood. That image was seared into her mind, leaving her stunned and thoughtful. I think I'm starting to understand. The scene cut to the next day. A slender hand offered a cold can of drink here. This one. Cha Hye-ri practiced a range of expressions and poses, talking to herself, pretending to be innocent. Oh, I found this on the road. You can have it. Then feigning enthusiasm while scratching her head and laughing, it's been getting hot lately. Right. Then acting indifferent. It fell out of your pocket, isn't it yours? She suddenly erupted like a volcano, shouting loudly, I can't do it. Desperate, she held her face and stood by the railing. God, I'm going crazy, how do I act natural? At that moment a sergeant and a soldier walked by, the soldier looking puzzled at her state. The sergeant asked confusedly, Isn't that Captain Shaw? What's she doing alone? The man beside him grumbled, Beats me, what's it to me? She ignored others and continued fussing over the can. Hye-ri propped her chin and thought, maybe I shouldn't give it well. What use is it to give it to the guy who always lies to me? Remembering the image of him covered in blood and wounds yet smiling with confident eyes, Hye-ri hesitated. Still, I should at least say hello. She looked at the can in her hand and suddenly softened, her eyes full of feeling, that Ryu Min-suk really did save the whole squad. Suddenly she startled, looking down. Oh, Min-suk and Cha Peng-ho were standing face to face below. The two below seemed to be discussing something. Hye-ri, standing far away, couldn't hear and wondered, the colonel and Ryu Min-suk, what are they doing down there? Hye-ri descended the stairs, quietly pleased, perfect timing. With 3 people it'll be less awkward, just hand it over quickly. She leaned in a bit nervously, about to speak. But her words were cut off by Cha Peng-ho's loud voice. Just now. What did you say? Without hesitation, Min-seok shouted, I will repeat what I just said. Min-seok's voice was clear and resolute. Tonight, Dami and I, his face unreadable, eyes fixed forward, Min-seok, as if long prepared, would leave this place. Cha Hye-ri, nearby, happened to overhear this and was left speechless with shock. The things she intended to say stuck in her throat. Hearing him so resolute, Cha Peng-ho put his hands on his hips and fell silent, eyes squeezed shut. Cha Peng-ho shouted, "Fine. If you say you're going to Daejeon, how can I stop you? But rushing off like this isn't right. You said you still have things to do." He reminded Min Seok about the dangerous zombies. If something even more vicious than those slick creatures appears now, our whole group will surely be killed. The image of a huge, deformed zombie flashed terrifyingly in his mind. Cha Peng-ho suggested that until our group is stronger, couldn't you stay a little longer? Min Seok's face was cold, his gaze indifferent, his words shattering hope. Why should I do that? Why should I sacrifice myself for the group? Cha Hae-ri, standing behind the wall, grew more conflicted as he continued. How people here live or die has nothing to do with me. Hearing that heartless line, her eyes widened in disbelief. Angry, she lunged out from behind the wall with her hands clenched. Cha Peng-ho and Min Seok, startled by the movement, turned. She scowled in fury and questioned him, but there was still a note of incredulity in her voice. Were those words true? Without hesitation or wavering, Min Seok replied calmly, "Yes." His gaze briefly clouded. "The only person who matters to me is Dami." Looking at her standing there with her face down, Min Seok still spoke those callous words. "I don't care what happens to you." Cha Hae-ri heard this and pressed her lips together, full of hatred. She said nothing further and turned her back to leave. Cha Peng-ho softly called after her, "Cha Hae-ri." Ryu Min Seok lowered his head in thought. If we'd taken the Amart route from the start, things might have turned out like this. The can in Hae-ri's hand was hurled hard to the ground. It was already dented with anger as life and death moments piled up. Cha Hae-ri cursed herself. "Wake up, Cha Hae-ri. What were you expecting from a monster like him?" As Hae-ri walked, she blamed herself. I'm crazy," while Min Seok's thoughts continued. "I've already begun to have feelings for her." He recalled when Hae-ri stood on the railing. Even with his back turned, he sensed her presence, so before it took deeper root, he had to cut off this seed. Min Seok remained bent over, his eyes unreadable. He thought that this way she would be safe. A voice snapped him back to reality. "Be careful, Ryu Min Seok." Cha Peng-ho kept trying to advise him. "Don't just coldly push her away, try using reason too." He pointed at Min Seok, his face showing some helplessness. "In this world, is Daejeon even safe? Are you really sure?" Cha Peng-ho pointed directly at Min Seok and proposed, "Or why don't you help me turn this group into the strongest shelter?" Hearing that, Min Seok thought inwardly, not a bad suggestion. His gaze wavered slightly. "It's not impossible with me and the Colonel right now, but..." A clock showed time slipping away. "We don't have much time left." Min Seok recalled what happened in his past life. It took 10 years for a slick entity to appear. The image of a large head with 5 eyes and a gruesome jaw gaping surface. Staring at the worried Cha Peng-ho, he thought that this time it's only been 10 days. At this rate, other high-level zombies will appear. Huge monsters with indistinct faces appeared on the ruined buildings, and this place will collapse before it can be reinforced. Min Seok said firmly, "I've made up my mind." Determination showed plainly in his eyes. "Dami and I, today, will go to Daejeon." Images of crumbling buildings and a silent night enveloping them. Suddenly something covered entirely in blood appeared. A monster made entirely of eyes and razor-sharp mouths. Its body bristling with spikes and blood, was being attacked and exploding. Cutscene. Min Seok told Peng-ho, "I've made up my mind. Dami and I are going to Daejeon today." Cha Peng-ho, helpless and angry, said, "Hey, Ryu Min Seok." Ryu Min Seok abruptly interrupted, "But I'll also put a proposal to the Colonel." Cha Peng-ho froze at those words. Cutscene. Min Seok was driving a steamroller along a cracked road. Around them were tanks and a truck carrying supplies and people, all moving forward on the quiet, deserted road. The tanks fired continuously, producing a blazing curtain of red. Zombies hit by the fire burst apart in agony. Lines from the earlier conversation surfaced. "Colonel, you're curious too, aren't you?" A tank hatch opened and a hand grabbed the rim, heading toward the perfect shelter. Cha Peng-ho, fully equipped with a gun at his side, gave a thumbs up and smiled approvingly at the Colonel's dream. Ryu Min Seok turned his head to look down. The vehicle beside them carried a girl wearing a helmet. He looked over and felt reassured. Ryu Dami signaled that it was safe with her finger and gave a faint smile. "Come see it with me." Min Seok adjusted the steamroller and looked straight ahead. He shouted with determination, "The survival of the Daejeon shelter. The Daejeon expedition departs." The scene shifted to the north bank of the Miho River. A bolt of lightning suddenly struck the monster below. The monster opened its mouth wide and emitted a horrifying cry. It seemed to be thrashing in pain. Cha Peng-ho exclaimed in surprise, "Oh my, look at the size of this thing." He couldn't help but marvel at its enormity. Min Seok immediately said, Biscus, it's a high-tier zombie creature that resembles a slug. He went on to describe the creature's appearance and traits. Regarding its toxin, the poison seeps from its entire body, not just one spot. The terrifying thing is that even a light touch can be lethal. Hearing that, Cha Pung-ho began to worry. So what do we do? The road from here to Daejeon is only that one bridge. Min-seok replied. It's a nocturnal species. He pointed to the image of Biscus and explained that, if exposed to its ultraviolet secretion, the skin will coagulate and mobility will drop sharply. And the only way to kill it is if you cut the protruding tumor in the middle of its head, you can eliminate it. Min-seok couldn't help but hope. 2 more hours until dawn. Hopefully the rain stops before then. Cha Pung-ho asked the other soldiers, any other biological reactions around? Lee In-hui answered, nothing else besides that creature, sir. As soon as he finished speaking, Cha Pung-ho shouted, good, we'll rest here. You guys repair the armor first. A loud response echoed. Roger. The atmosphere fell silent as everyone focused on their task. Jaehan still felt uneasy, suspicious. No matter how you look at it, it's fishy. Lee In-hui asked doubtfully. What is it? Jaehan said. Anything else? In front of the two of them was the sight of Min-seok laughing and chatting cheerfully with Cha Pung-ho. Jaehan said suspiciously, that Ryu Min-seok. He crossed his arms and scowled, saying, how does he know so much about zombies? Lee In-hui, putting away his tools, replied, he's an expert after all. But Jaehan wasn't satisfied with that answer. He shouted, no, so what if he's an expert? Has he gone through the zombie phase before us? The colonel doesn't even have many shells. Blindly trusting that guy and acting on it, does that make sense? Cha Pung-ho had somehow appeared behind him without Jaehan noticing. Jaehan continued badmouthing him. Yeah, the colonel's old. Maybe he's getting a bit senile. Cha Pung-ho's face grew darker and darker. Jaehan, still unaware, went on. Thoughts like that are an insult to the honorable colonel, got it? A moment later, a miserable scream echoed everywhere. Cha Pung-ho flew into a rage and struck Jaehan's head. In another development, Dami stood up and stretched, exhausted. She touched her butt in surprise. It hit my butt, bending over so long makes it hurt. Min-seok called, scowling, Dami. Dami sat down, clutching her head in fright. Min-seok worriedly called, Dami, are you okay? Dami patted her chest and scolded him. What was that? Suddenly appearing behind me like that, of course I was startled. Min-seok handed her a packet of snacks and said, I was just afraid you'd be hungry. Dami picked up her umbrella. Don't appear like that out of nowhere. Hearing that, Min-seok was very surprised. Huh? Dami awkwardly explained, I'm just not used to your face yet, Dad. Finally, Min-seok understood her worry and said, I'm sorry, Dami. Min-seok spoke with some sadness. You don't look like your dad, do you? Dami tilted her head and asked suspiciously. Excuse me? Suddenly Min-seok's eyes widened and surprise showed on his face. Oh, huh. He laughed heartily. I mean, I'm very different from before now, right? If I'm not the same as I used to be, it's hard to recognize me. But you're still grateful to me, right? But seeing his daughter's expression, Min-seok scolded himself. Ryu Min-seok, what are you saying? Stop babbling, you can't ask her that way. He felt deeply uneasy. A question kept swirling in his mind that he dared not voice for fear of Dami's answer. A barrage of questions haunted Min-seok. Why, my daughter? I've become a monster like your father. Why do you still accept me? Dami pointed at Min-seok's eyes and said, Your eyes, she affirmed confidently. Your eyes are exactly the same as they always were. Min-seok asked in stunned disbelief. Eyes? You mean these red eyes? On hearing that, Dami immediately objected. What are you talking about? Not those. She began to tell him a story. When I was 7, the memory of their mother's funeral resurfaced once more the day she passed. At that time, Dami had noticed her father's eyes, and she has remembered them ever since. She said, You always carried that look in your eyes. Dami believed it was a gaze filled with pity, the way he always looked at her like she was the most pitiable person in the world. Dami continued, That look always seemed to want to say sorry to me. She frankly admitted her feelings. Whenever I see you like that, honestly I'm very annoyed, because you seem like the most pitiful person alive. Min-seok was bewildered at her next remark. But it's you, it's Dad. Dami went on to describe her impression. 2 weeks before the door burst open that day, a blood-soaked man walked in. At that time, she was sitting on the floor in fear. Min-seok, his body covered in wounds, pushed the door open and stood before Dami. That scene made her go pale and left her speechless. You. Dami gaped, mouth agape, carefully studying the newly appeared man. She said, I saw it, the look in his eyes. After saying that, Dami smiled gently. In this world, the person who looks at me with that gaze, she looked straight at her father and affirmed, It's only you. At that moment, the monster continued to roar violently. Cha Peng-ho shouted orders to the soldiers, "Fire." Immediately, a volley of rounds was unleashed. All the shots hit the creature, making it writhe in agony. The monster opened its mouth wide and screamed toward those who had fired at it. Min-seok leapt up, sword in hand. He raised both blades high, gathering momentum to deliver a decisive strike. Min-seok clenched his teeth and focused all his strength. Then he brought the blade down directly onto the creature's head. Instantly, fresh blood spurted out. The creature was pinned down to the ground. Jaehan, sitting on the tank, still couldn't believe it. Impossible. Cha Peng-ho immediately grabbed his head. He laughed and said, "I understand your doubts about Min-seok, but Jaehan, do you think belief is just a choice?" By now, the creature's body had been cleaved in two. Its massive body fell into the water, sending spray everywhere. Cha Peng-ho continued, "In this hell, what we can do," he looked at Min-seok's muscular back and asserted, "is simply to trust that man." Cha Peng-ho bared his teeth in a big grin. There's no other option. Min-seok stood coldly on a rock, his face stained with the creature's blood. Time rewound to 11 days earlier, day 3 after the zombie pandemic broke out. In an area shrouded in mist, the ground cracked. Donggu, Daejeon. This was Alpha, a zombie with bulging eyes, a gaping mouth with yellowed teeth and a protruding tongue, and a darkened bullet wound on its forehead. At that spot, a powerful foot slammed down, causing the zombie's head to explode like a balloon. A voice announced, "Enemy neutralized." A formation of fully armed soldiers marched forward with authority, the ground littered with various immobilized undead. 10:47 a.m. Seong District. Daejeon. Defense successful. Inside a room full of communications equipment, a soldier wearing headphones joyfully shouted, "Sir, we've done it. The Daejeon line has held." The man beside him glanced over, equally elated. "Is that true?" In the busy room of soldiers at the Gye Ryong Joint Epidemic Response Headquarters, the headset soldier sat at a console and added, "However, reinforcement forces from other cities have mostly been wiped out or lost contact." The soldier's face showed concern. "The only area that has maintained its defense so far is Daejeon." The nearby soldier anxiously asked, "Status V1? The soldier hurriedly checked and replied, "Sir, since an hour after the defense order, there has been no signal." The commander slammed his hand on the table in fury, shouting, "Damn it!" The nearby soldier looked worried. The commander narrowed his eyes in helplessness. Grinding his teeth in anger, the zombies are spreading at an alarmingly rapid and vast rate. Staring at the map on the screen with marked locations, he wondered how to cope with this unprecedented pandemic. Could the Republic of Korea end like this? The commander's face showed a hint of joy. "But in just 3 days we've not only survived." Looking at the safe area marked in green, his voice carried some happiness that we even managed to hold the line. The commander's tone grew more approving. Indeed, thanks to the Blue Eagle troops, the image of disciplined, fully armed soldiers appeared. A soldier spoke up. "This is Alpha requesting approval to expand the operational area to Dunsan." The commander held the radio, deep in thought. The commander squeezed his eyes shut and decided, "Approved. By any means necessary, complete the mission, Alpha." Shinji-woo's gaze was resolute. "Understood." The commander looked at the screen with hope. "It's thanks to you, Ji-woo. Now we can only rely on you." Amid the motionless zombies, Shinji-woo moved, then realized something as the commander's hopeful voice rang out. "If you can hold Daejeon until the last moment." Shinji-woo glanced over, somewhat alarmed. "Then we can once more counterattack." On the rooftop across from them, a figure stood firm, looking straight down. All the soldiers below turned their eyes to that silhouette. The silhouette revealed itself to be a zombie in a new form, its body rippling with thick, well-defined muscles. Its eyes were blood red, complex and menacing. On another ridge, Min-seok's whole team stood on high ground, watching. Cha Peng-ho spoke up. "Min-seok, what's going on here?" His eyes showed disbelief. "The Daejeon you mentioned. Why is it so different from what I imagined?" Cha Peng-ho's expression was as if witnessing something shocking. Before him was the panorama of a beautiful city, as if no zombie event had ever occurred. He marveled that it was even better than he had imagined. Cha Peng-ho shouted joyfully and excitedly, "Now I understand why you always sing Daejeon's praises. It far exceeds expectations." The soldiers behind him were equally joyful and surprised. They hadn't expected a city so intact. Oh, it was deeply moving. Ryudami glanced at Min-seok in surprise. "So this place really exists. Daejeon is indeed intact, just as her father said." But unlike the others, Ryu Min-seok seemed very angry, staring straight ahead with clenched hands. Ryudami flinched at his reaction. She hesitantly called, "Dad." Ryu Min-seok looked ready to fight at any moment. His teeth were clenched, veins bulging on his face. He thought that something was very strange. After the zombie disaster, Korean cities fell one after another, and Daejeon was no exception. Images of the city ravaged by zombies came to mind. But then, here a counterattack had begun. Images of fully armed soldiers standing before eliminated zombies surfaced, territory gradually expanding, even when we first set foot in Daejeon. Min-seok recalled the previous life when he brought Dami here. Only 3 districts had maintained defenses. Yet now, looking at the city's area below, he realized many more districts had been held, multiplied many times over. Min-seok's gaze was full of disbelief, surprise, and suspicion, and all of this had happened in just 14 days. His face was serious as a vague unease washed over him. With that same expression, thoughts kept arising in his head. Senses honed over 100 lifetimes whispered to him that something was very wrong. Min-seok turned back and said sharply, "Listen carefully, Ryudami." She startled and replied, "Yes." His voice and face were grave. "From now on you must not leave my side. Understood." Ryudami still didn't understand and asked, "Dad, why do you sound so scary?" On the other side, Cha Peng-ho turned to the soldiers and said, "Come on, time's short, hurry, and prepare. If we're late, we'll be dead for sure." He laughed loudly and full of hope. "Let's move out." Lee In-hui spoke up. "Colonel," being called Cha Peng-ho suddenly stopped smiling and answered, He was a bit anxious, holding a tablet, and said, "Permission to report, sir." Cha Peng-ho asked, "What is there a problem?" He hesitated. "Well, it's hard to say whether it's really a problem." He recalled that on the way from Sejong to here they passed a large plane, didn't they? An image came to mind of them moving by tank across the fields. "It was there that I saw it." Lee In-hui suddenly realized something. His expression showed some agitation. On the fields were strange lines, huge rifts, as if someone had drawn on the ground. Cha Peng-ho was startled. "Rifts? There's something like that." He stroked the tablet screen and said the scale was so large it was hard to see with the naked eye, so I sent up a drone. He passed the screen to him. This is what showed up. Seeing what was on the screen, Cha Peng-ho was a bit alarmed. "What the hell, a giant drawing? Why is there something like this out there?" Suddenly Min-seok ran over in a panic, snatched the tablet and stared at what was on it. Cha Peng-ho was shoved hard and got a bit angry. "Hey Ryu Min-seok, what are you doing? That hurts." Lee In-hui behind scratched his head in confusion. Min-seok's face suddenly darkened. Rage was evident on his face. "This is..." At the same time, at the expo tower in Do-rong, Daejeon, the space was silent and empty, as if nothing had ever happened. A soldier entered with his eyes blindfolded and reported, "Detected 10 entities moving near Suyang Mountain. The reconnaissance team is approaching." In front of the soldier stood a man with his arms folded behind his back, quietly gazing at the moon outside. The other man spoke, "Under no circumstances be careless. Welcome them with the utmost respect." On this side, Ryu Min-seok's group was in that forest. On the screen was footage of the field, and only then did the figure become satisfied. The drawing on the field clearly revealed the image of the goddess Garyong. Her face appeared with a mysterious smile, and Min-seok startled at the image. A thought rose in him. At that time, I still didn't know the true cause of the unease creeping into my heart. On this side, the mysterious man just turned his face. "It is here in Daejeon that I once desired more than anything." The man's face became clearer, his eyes flashing red with a dangerous smile. "I will, for the first time, confront." His face was full of brooding worry, and eyes that emitted red light, like a massive tsunami. Reeds catch fire. A flame was lit in the darkness. As night fell, somewhere, many people gathered before a large stage. The screen showed chaotic scenes of people attacked by zombies. A voice rang out. 2 weeks ago, we were like a candle in the wind. We lost family and dear friends. All hope vanished. All joy gone," the crowd whispered, making the atmosphere even more bustling. Suddenly, many faces changed. Something had appeared that made everyone deeply uneasy. The narration continued, but then before us the person appeared. A light shone from above, revealing a vague silhouette. The voice shouted the name. "His name is Baek Do-hyun." Hearing that, everyone was astonished. Then they became excited again. Hyun, the final sound finished as a figure in a white suit jumped down. He landed flamboyantly amid the dazzling stage lights. Those below cheered wildly. "He's here, he's here." They rejoiced insanely, unable to contain their emotions. The introduction blared. It was Baek Do-hyun. Standing center stage was a mysterious figure with a blindfold, wearing a white suit and a mic, slick like a famous idol. Do-hyun slowly began to speak. "We are facing an unprecedented crisis. This is not just our crisis. This is a crisis for all humanity." Everyone fell silent to listen. The atmosphere grew heavy, and everyone showed clear concern. Do-hyun continued solemnly. "Dear citizens of Daejeon, do you think our survival is a coincidence? Not at all. We are the last flame on this land. We are the hope that will ignite again, Do-hyun calmly explained. Those below screamed with excitement. Beek Do-hyun, thanks to you we are alive. They all chanted in unison, Beek Do-hyun, Beek Do-hyun, and swept up in the mood. Do-hyun declared firmly, I promise, this last flame will never be allowed to go out. Beek Do-hyun will be the log that keeps this radiant city alive. And everyone moved by his words, placed their full trust in him. Do-hyun raised both hands high and continued. Until, at the final moment he drew a deep breath and shouted loudly, his tone resolute. The crowd below echoed his roar, Beek Do-hyun, Beek Do-hyun, Beek Do-hyun. In the wings, Min-suk's group, Pung-ho, Ryu-dami, and a few others, stood silently observing. Pung-ho asked in confusion, Ryu Min-suk, is this the Daejeon you were talking about? Min-suk answered bluntly, no, it's my first time seeing it too. Which left Pung-ho and Ryu-dami astonished. Watching the crowd cheer, Min-seok added, a spectacle like this. Then he glanced at Do-hyun, who was smiling and speaking cheerfully. Min-seok said seriously, that man as well. He scanned the surroundings, thinking to himself that in past lives, the Thon Wang militia had been the center of Daejeon's reconstruction. But now they were merely henchmen. Min-seok silently observed the soldiers standing solemnly behind them. He glanced around searching for something, continuing his thought that, most importantly, that person was nowhere to be seen. The leader of the Thon Wang militia, Min-seok, pictured one figure, the hero Shin Ji-woo, the legendary hero. Min-seok raised the question, where was he now? What variable had changed Daejeon after all? He pondered deeply. Beek Do-hyun. Who was he, really? Do-hyun's mysterious demeanor made Min-seok very curious. Turning back to Do-hyun, he cheerfully announced, ladies and gentlemen, today we have cause to celebrate. Our goddess has sent new allies to this city. Do-hyun exclaimed excitedly, please, greet them with thunderous cheers. Suddenly, something was thrown at him. A massive explosion occurred, and people screamed in panic. Smoke and dust billowed, causing Min-seok's group to choke. Min-seok bent over to shield Ryu-dami, while Pung-ho shouted, cover your mouth and duck down. Min-seok anxiously asked, Dami, are you okay? Ryu-dami replied calmly, yes. Min-seok assessed the situation silently. It was a smoke grenade. Who had done this? He felt bewildered. Suddenly, Min-seok saw something that left him utterly astonished. Do-hyun inhaled the smoke as well. He collapsed to his knees, coughing violently. Having been directly hit by the grenade, Do-hyun's coughing persisted relentlessly. In the chaos, a soldier wearing a gas mask suddenly appeared behind Do-hyun, pressing a gun to his head. From his eyes one could recognize that the soldier was Ji-woo. He looked at Do-hyun with hatred and fell silent. Then a loud bang rang out. The crowd below screamed in horror, everyone terrified by the scene before them. The face of Lord Beek Do-hyun. His face. He had been shot. Do-hyun lay motionless on the ground, blood spreading down his head across his white suit. The one who caused this was none other than Ji-woo, who still held the gun pointed at him. Other soldiers ran up and restrained Ji-woo. One shouted, ripping off his mask, you crazy bastard, what did you just do? But seeing Ji-woo's face left him completely stunned. He blurted in confusion, Shin Ji-woo. Min-seok on this side was shocked. He wondered silently, what? Looking at Ji-woo's hateful face, Min-seok thought to himself, could he really be Shin Ji-woo? Ji-woo shouted angrily, citizens of Daejeon, it's over, wake up. Don't you understand? He pleaded, trying to convince them. We've all been deceived by Beek Do-hyun until now. It's time to open your eyes. The crowd below murmured in confusion. Suddenly, Do-hyun sprang up before everyone's eyes. Everyone was stunned. Someone exclaimed, he's awake. A woman shouted excitedly, Lord Beek Do-hyun. He rose again as if resurrected. His abnormal recovery didn't frighten people but made them cheer as if brainwashed. Ji-woo, restrained, could do nothing but seethe. He ground his teeth in hatred. Beek Do-hyun. That damned monster, his head was injured. Yet he stood there cheerfully as if nothing had happened. Do-hyun spoke slowly. Today is indeed a momentous day. The day that bastard tried to kill Beek Do-hyun. Ji-woo was gagged and restrained by soldiers. Do-hyun continued, raising his hand with vigor. And today is the day we will punish the demon Shin Ji-woo, he declared loudly. The crowd roared in response. Someone shouted insults. Shin Ji-woo, you filthy devil. Another added, do you think Beek Do-hyun will fall to a monster like you? Carry out the punishment on that devil. Ji-woo was then handcuffed to a wooden plank as everyone chanted, execute him, execute him, execute. Do-hyun made a gesture to stop. The crowd fell silent. The atmosphere grew hushed. Do-hyun spoke gently, "Dear citizens of Daejeon, thank you very much." He was moved and grateful. "I could stand up from death because you stood with me." Do-hyun pointed below and affirmed, "You are the citizens of a miraculous city." Hearing this, everyone was deeply moved. A girl cried out, "The goddess Gye Ryong has descended among us." Everyone shouted together, "Relight the dying embers. Reborn once more, I proclaim to the world." Do-hyun spread his arms, feeling the atmosphere. He exclaimed enthusiastically, "The brilliant beginning of history." The crowd echoed, laughing wildly. "The last flame, the light that will not go out." The noise was terrifying. Pung-ho and Ryu-dami stood stunned at the spectacle. Ji-woo, restrained, could only watch helplessly as the crowd was brainwashed. Do-hyun shouted excitedly, "Daejeon!" The crowd erupted in cheers while Min-seok's group quietly observed from the wings. Suddenly, Min-seok's expression changed. It seemed he sensed something. Thoughts kept echoing in Ryu Min-seok's mind, always circling the same lingering question. Looking at the face before him, he continued thinking about the bizarre events he had experienced. Their grotesque forms were completely different from past lives. Could it be that the face in Ryu Min-seok's head was his own? Then the image of Baek Do-hyun rallying the people below flashed through his mind. Am I the only one? Ryu Min-seok thought again about the source of the unease he felt when looking at Daejeon. Next came Ryu Min-seok's face, and then Ryu-dami's trembling. Ryu Min-seok kept remembering everything he had experienced until now. Like a complicated jigsaw puzzle, its outlines began to emerge. In his thoughts was also the image of the goddess Giryong. He thought again of himself and Ryu-dami. This made Ryu Min-seok extremely excited. The truth was gradually revealing itself before his eyes. Baek Do-hyeon, he was like me. The stream of recollections passed on. And at the expo tower, at this moment, Jae-han seemed very agitated. "We must go." But everyone else in the room remained silent. Seeing that, he felt even more uneasy. "Colonel, let's return to the brigade quickly. Something about this place is very unstable." This time Lee and Hui agreed with him. "I agree too." Seeing that, Jae-han continued, "I admit the infrastructure is real, but the people here seem to have lost their wits. And that mayor." "Yes, Baek Do-hyun, the one in the white suit with a hat covering his eyes. That madman. He's the strangest. That performance made my head feel like it would explode. I almost vomited." At that, Cha Pung-ho began to be curious. "The performance?" No sooner said than Jae-han began to speak continuously. "Yes, it was all fake. He colluded with that black-haired guy who rushed the stage." Lee In-hui didn't believe it really, but Jae-han insisted. "I saw it with my own eyes, while he was trapped in the smoke." From there, Jae-han saw clearly that, on the stage the man had pointed a gun at his head. And Baek Do-hyun, that man, was laughing. Staging, deception, provocation, these are typical tactics. I heard there's some execution ceremony tomorrow. Who knows what stunt they'll pull next? We'd better not get involved. What's the point? This time Lee In-hui agreed. Jae-han is right. If we stay, it'll only bring more trouble. As soon as he finished, Cha Pung-ho ordered, "Everyone outside." Only Ryu Min-seok was to remain. The rest go outside. While Jae-han and Lee In-hui didn't understand, Colonel, but seeing the Colonel's attitude, they had no choice but to step outside reluctantly. At that moment Ryu-dami was also standing outside. Ryu Min-seok saw her and gave a faint smile. In the room now only Ryu Min-seok and Cha Pung-ho remained. Without beating around the bush, he demanded of Ryu Min-seok, "Speak. Baek Do-hyun, could he be the same kind of monster as you?" Ryu Min-seok had no intention of hiding it. Indeed, the Colonel also realized. Hearing this, Cha Pung-ho quickly replied, "I told you one look and you'd know. He is like you. There's an inhuman quality that emanates from him. So you knew beforehand and came here to conspire with him? Did Baek Do-hyun and you trick us?" At that, Ryu Min-seok hurriedly explained, "That's absolutely not true. Making you an enemy, with Dami and me, would be a dangerous decision. That Baek Do-hyun and I are the same variable." Hearing this, Cha Pung-ho's mood softened somewhat. "I understand. Then, the conclusion is reached. We will return to the brigade." Not stopping there, Cha Pung-ho added, "I trust the stability of the brigade I built, but if my absence lasts any longer, honestly, I am a bit worried. The infrastructure in Daejeon stirs my ambition. My dream is for the people, for this Korea, to be restored. More than anywhere else. Daejeon could become a stronghold for humanity's reconstruction. But when fanaticism takes over, Daejeon can no longer be a safe place. As the kids said, getting involved only brings trouble. Let's return." Hearing him, Ryu Min-seok found it inappropriate to argue and complied. "Yes, I agree." Things proceeded like that at the Expo Science Park. A guard spoke in a serious tone. "What's going on?" The person who appeared before them was Ryu Min-seok. He approached the guard with a smile and greeted, "Hello, I'm Ryu Minseok. I'm here to see the mayor. Hearing that, the guard lowered his guard a bit. You're the citizen who arrived yesterday, right? But another guard, less easygoing, said, Sorry. Please return to the assigned lodging. You may not know, but Mayor Baek Do-hyun is not receiving visitors now. Ryu Min-seok didn't make things difficult. Then please could you pass along my message? If you pass my message along, with an extremely pleasant face, Ryu Min-seok said confidently, he will surely want to meet. And just like that, he was admitted. Baek Do-hyun also welcomed him warmly. All right, citizen Ryu Min-seok, what do you want to say to me? Ryu Min-seok went straight to the point. You must have heard already, right? That's why you brought me up here, isn't it? As soon as he said that, outwardly calm, Ryu Min-seok recalled. What I told Cha Pung-ho, I agree, but we will leave this place more easily. This place is indeed a fanatic sect. In other words, they will hate our departure intensely. How violently such cults can erupt in extreme situations. I know very well. When that happens, people could be seriously injured. They could even die. And, if Baek Do-hyun is an entity like me. Returning to the conversation, Baek Do-hyun slowly replied to Ryu Min-seok. Indeed, citizen Ryu Min-seok. You understand well. He certainly will. Even Cha Pung-ho lost patience with his deliberation. Hey, speak up. Give your conclusion. Of course, Ryu Min-seok dared not equivocate. Early this morning, I will tell Baek Do-hyun my true identity first. Cha Pung-ho couldn't comprehend. What? That's how it is? However, Ryu Min-seok hadn't finished speaking. I will introduce myself slightly differently, in a way that makes people not dare to touch me lightly. Outwardly, Ryu Min-seok was still speaking slowly. Like you. But inwardly he thought that the two of them should not both be present in Daejeon. Ryu Min-seok's words kept ringing. I am the one, chosen by the goddess like you. Baek Do-hyun made no move because he was continuously struggling. He called it a haunting entity, didn't he? A moment later, Baek Do-hyun finally spoke. You mean, you are the representative. Are you similar to Baek Do-hyun? Ryu Min-seok replied without hesitation. Yes. Baek Do-hyun appeared leisurely, pondering something. After a while he continued, Oh, is that so? No sooner had he finished than, unbelievably, he attacked Ryu Min-seok. His hand forced his head down onto the table. Unbelievable, you dare claim you are like me, Baek Do-hyun? Then show me. Let's see if you were truly chosen by the goddess. Or are you just mocking with a deceitful Tunga scheming devil? Seemingly sensing something off, Baek Do-hyun lifted his face and ignored. The blood, trickling from the crown of his head down his body. His sensitive nostrils caught a strange scent that made him feel as if he were falling into a void. What is this smell? True to his competitive nature, the mayor of Daejeon paced back and forth to memorize the strange scent and locate its heavy, unpleasant odor. Turning toward where the crowd stood, through his view among a mass of inferior humans, Baek Do-hyun witnessed a figure emitting a peculiar light. I'd never smelled this before. Where is it coming from? It seemed the man also felt the sharp gaze on him, so he looked back. Showing no deference, Baek Do-hyun strode to where the mysterious figure stood. Hey, what's your name? Those blazing red eyes, that power he recognized immediately. This man is also chosen by the goddess. The man in front answered cheerfully. Yes, I am. Ryu Min-seok. Baek Do-hyun's brief memory flashed, and then went out as he recalled who the flattened rat on the floor was. Upon hearing the other's name, he received a murderous look from Ryu Min-seok. Baek Do-hyun's hand still refused to let go, continuing to hold Ryu Min-seok's head as he nagged. That disgusting smell you've had since yesterday is still strong. The image of the brigade people saw, to him, the beasts of a different class. Baek Do-hyun clicked his tongue. They seemed suspicious, so today I plan to call you lot in turn. Feeling disrespected by this lowly man, the corner of his mouth twisted. The mayor's mood was worse than the weather. And you crawled here on your own, did you? What for? The more he spoke, the more his blood boiled. Veins rose across his face. It felt like this masked man was about to explode. How dare you? You think yourself like Baek Do-hyun. Refusing to be compared to the lowly, he, like a spoiling child, challenged. Then show me. Let's see if you were truly chosen by the goddess, or just mocking with a sly tongue, you scheming devil. And as expected, wish granted, the unusual silence made Baek Do-hyun pause for a moment. Immediately, he released Ryu Min-seok and leaped back into a defensive stance. The mayor's hand had become distorted and bruised. It seemed he had retaliated silently. Seeing his hand mangled beyond recognition, Baek Do-hyun clicked his tongue in displeasure. By then Ryu Min-seok had forced himself up, standing opposite the room with not a scratch on him. But his emotions were no better. His bloodshot eyes glowed like lava burning his opponent. Ryu Min-seok was truly furious. With extraordinary physiology, The competitive Baek Do-hyun clenched his jaw to avoid dying of rage, and at the same time restored his distorted hand. Before the other could issue a challenge, Baek Do-hyun rushed forward to crush Ryu Min-seok. A thunderous explosion rang out, producing gray smoke that clouded the surrounding view and sent shockwaves through the entire room. Sensing something wrong, a fat middle-aged man came running in, shouting nonstop, "What is that? What's all that noise?" It was Kim Song-chung, deputy mayor of Daejeon. The guard still standing warily at the door replied to him, "There's noise coming from the office, but Mayor Baek Do-hyun won't respond no matter how we call." Kim Sang-chung startled. "What?" With a smooth, unlined brow and emboldened, he began berating his subordinates. "Damn it, you idiots. Then break the door down and rush in. What are you waiting for? If anything happens to the mayor, can you take responsibility?" Suddenly, unfairly scolded, one guard tried to justify himself, but Mayor Baek Do-hyun ordered absolutely no one be allowed in. He said he had important matters to discuss privately with citizen Ryu Min-seok. Hearing that name for the first time, the man was astonished. Since his promotion, this was the first time Kim Song-chung had heard it. Could it be some major figure? Ryu Min-seok, who is he? Unlike the somewhat noisy scene outside, inside the room it was no longer a conversation but a life-or-death fight. A blow with enough force to crack a skull. Luckily, Ryu Min-seok reacted quickly and evaded. Allowing no opening, the two lunged at each other like beasts. It seemed Ryu Min-seok was at a disadvantage. His left arm had been severed by the masked mayor, forcing him to leap back to defend. Losing the upper, gaining the lower, he kicked hard into the mayor's chest, sending Baek Do-hyun flying straight backward. Fortunately, the latter was agile and sat down to avoid slamming into the door. Not wanting to look so battered, Baek Do-hyun stood up immediately. Reluctantly, he nodded. "Ryu Min-seok, seeing that state of yours, I have to admit it. Your two severed arms have now regrown and healed, at least you." Not a blabbermouth like Shin Ji-woo, whether Baek Do-hyun was praising or mocking was unclear, but for him to acknowledge someone's strength meant Ryu Min-seok's power was no trivial matter. Yet the mayor wouldn't yield. "You say you're like me? I still can't accept that." Baek Do-hyun's childish nature baffled him. This madman babbled like a child stripped of a crown just after winning a treasure hunt. But it looked like Ryu Min-seok was about to receive a deadly blow. From within Baek Do-hyun emanated the energy of a skull-like demon that seemed ready to swallow him whole. How terrifying was that power? Apparently it's no wonder the Daejeon mayor is so arrogant. His outfit made Baek Do-hyun uncomfortable. He hurriedly unbuttoned each shirt button. "I'll show you." A part of his past surfaced. The image of his aged, bruised body tied to a wooden stake and burned alive. And the moment the goddess shone as if granting Baek Do-hyun a second chance. Even if buried, he had engraved in his heart the blessing the goddess had bestowed upon him. How powerful! He removed the outer vest, as if shedding another layer of persona. The monster was officially unleashed. Suddenly there was a strange sound at the door. What's happening outside? Truly a meddler, Kim Song-chung had ignored his orders and burst inside. "Your Honor, the mayor." Already in a bad mood and now dragged into this, Baek Do-hyun spoke coldly. "Deputy Mayor, why are you in here?" The flustered man blurted. "Mayor, are you all right? Why is your clothing like that? And what about the office?" Looking at the room like a battlefield, he offered a perfunctory fake smile. "Ah, we just spoke a bit loudly, right? Sorry if we worried you, Deputy Mayor." Receiving the apology drained the color from Kim Sang-chung's face. He shook, stammering, "No, it's nothing. I'm just relieved you're safe." Mayor Baek Do-hyun cut him off, displeased. "But, Deputy Mayor," he smiled at the softened tone and continued, "Yes, you still haven't answered my question, have you?" Towering, Baek Do-hyun closed his mouth and, with contempt, angrily emphasized each word, making the deputy mayor tremble. "Why did you come in here?" This is bad veins standing out on his face. "I'm not lying. Baek Do-hyun is about to kill him. I explicitly ordered that no one be allowed in. So why did you?" Pressed by his authority, Kim Sang-chung shook and stammered. I only came because the crowd was loud. I was worried something had happened to you." Finding the excuse nonsense, Baek Do-hyun turned to Ryu Min-seok. Abruptly and without preamble, he called out a single word, "Hey." To everyone's surprise, Ryu Min-seok was kneeling prostrate on the ground in a submissive pose, leaving the mayor unable to guess his intent. "No longer hostile," Ryu Min-seok gently explained. "There must be a misunderstanding. When I said I'm like you, I didn't mean an equal. I, Ryu Min-seok, only meant that we are brothers who received the goddess's blessing." Those sappy, foolish words left Baek Do-hyun stunned and speechless. Smiling as sincerely as he could, Ryu Min-seok declared, "Lord Baek Do-hyun, I beg to follow you." Judging by his expression, it seemed this was some kind of plan. Earlier, Ryu Min-seok had discussed this with Colonel Cha Peng-ho. The colonel fretted, "Sycophancy? You mean you want to flatter Baek Do-hyun?" Folding his arms in mock helplessness, Cha Peng-ho probed, "So, you intend to kneel before him, like you did before me last time?" Ryu Min-seok didn't deny it. "If necessary, I will." Seeing that, he teased the old colonel. Those in power do love that posture. The jab made Cha Peng-ho flush with embarrassment. "You say that to teach me?" With Daejeon besieged by iron gates, Ryu Min-seok calculated carefully. "We must win Baek Do-hyun's favor if we want to leave Daejeon safely." Having lived through 99 rebirths, Ryu Min-seok could naturally understand people's hearts. To a person in power, an offer from someone who threatened him but swore undying loyalty was tempting, and Baek Do-hyun would surely respond. But the plan went slightly off track. The mayor wasn't an amateur to be so easily deceived. In the same puppet without strings posture, he revealed every nook of the mayor's plan. "You only want to flatter me, so I'll believe you. To protect you and your comrades, and in the end you'll stab me in the back, right?" Smirking with contempt, he taunted Ryu Min-seok. "Do you think Baek Do-hyun would fall for such a cheap trap?" The mayor's face darkened, and he fell silent. This man was cunning indeed. "But who is Ryu Min-seok?" he replied confidently. "So what?" Baek Do-hyun's reaction was beyond Ryu Min-seok's expectations. "What? He's manipulating you? If that were true, you wouldn't be harmed at all, would you?" That raised eyebrow and the mix of pressure and flattery worked as expected. "Even if I betrayed you, I'd still lose. Because you're wary and far stronger than I am." But he couldn't cover it up either. Ryu Min-seok was sincere. "The only thing I care about is my comrades' safety. I won't do anything that puts them in danger." He raised his head confidently and, a bit provocatively, asked, "What do you think? Do you still believe I'm lying?" Those 7 words, "sole ambassador of the goddess," were enough for Ryu Min-seok to seem to have won his trust. After all, he said exactly what Baek Do-hyun wanted to hear. He pinched the bridge of his nose and scowled. "Huh, what you just said is incredibly irritating. Truly, it pleases me." And Baek Do-hyun burst into gleeful laughter. His emotions turned as quickly as a spinning top, making him unpredictable. Turning and slowly stepping toward Kim Sang-jung, he shrugged with delight. "Fine, I, Baek Do-hyun, accept Ryu Min-seok. You and your comrades will be protected, and I will grant you a special position as my aide." With his slow-witted brain, Kim Sang-jung was dumbfounded and didn't understand what was happening. But it was too late. Suddenly, he received a painful blow tragically. His final feeling was of betrayal. Indeed, Baek Do-hyun had plunged his hand through Kim Sang-jung's heart. Pitifully, he didn't hesitate to do it in front of Ryu Min-seok, both to show power and to warn him if he disobeyed conveniently. The vice mayor's seat was vacant. Given Baek Do-hyun's twisted nature, it wouldn't be that easy, but there's one condition. "You must pass my test." Sure enough, Colonel Cha Peng-ho's words weren't wrong. "Be careful, Ryu Min-seok. If he truly is a mad cult leader, his methods will be crueler than anyone else's." Baek Do-hyun's terrifying smile was revealed. "So, Citizen Ryu Min-seok, do you dare accept this challenge? It seems Ryu Min-seok has no way out. This will be very bloody." In the dead of night, a young man with a waxen face suddenly shouted, "Execute!" Not just him, every resident of Daejeon moved like a machine, repeating mechanically, "Execute, execute." As if sensing their pleas went unanswered, they suddenly became frenzied, screaming until their neck veins bulged. "Execute, execute." Hundreds of residents stood in neat rows like gigantic blocks of goods. The atmosphere grew increasingly eerie with uncontrolled shouts. "Please execute, please execute." And the person they were aiming at was the silent man tied to a tall wooden stake, accused on utterly baseless charges, the devil Shin Ji-woo. Worthy of annihilation. Contrasting with that insanely chaotic scene, another Daejeon resident, dressed as a server, wore an elegant smile and asked, "Would you like some wine?" Standing in the VIP spot, Cha Peng-ho refused without a second thought. "No, fine." Under the watch of the Blue Falcon squad, Ryu Dami finally couldn't contain her frustration and spoke up. "Colonel, please tell me I've already put this strap on as you ordered." Her face tightened and her tone grew hurried. "Where is my father, sir?" But everyone else avoided answering Ryu Dami, and her anxiety swelled. "Why does no one answer me? What is going on? Something's happened to him. Right?" Cha Peng-ho gave no reply. Instead, he began issuing orders to others. "Hey, you 3. They flusteredly answered, "Yes." As expected, his command was, "Take Min-seok's daughter away. Fall back to a safe position." Hearing that, Ryu Dami reacted even more violently, losing control and angrily shouting at the adults, "Why won't anybody tell me? Something has happened to my father, hasn't it? Others could only soothe her gently. Dami, calm down. Cha Peng-ho turned his back as if he couldn't face her. Her screams still echoed. Colonel, prompting him to curse helplessly. Damn it. On the other side, Baek Do-hyun's arm slowly pointed skyward, and his magnetic voice rang out, Dear citizens of Daejeon. He stood on the lifting platform in his white suit, which made the cruel announcement stand out. From now on, the execution ceremony officially begins. The crowd seemed injected with adrenaline, and for a moment they all surged forward. They shouted toward Shinji-woo, Execute, destroy the demon, Shinji-woo. Then, suddenly Baek Do-hyun, as if in great pain, leaned both hands on the railing, his body sagging. Fake tears fell as he said, But first I have sad news to tell you. His body trembled violently, his tear-streaked face accusing a crime that never occurred. The disgusting demon Shinji-woo this morning violently escaped and then murdered our deputy mayor, Kim Sang-jung. But the most ridiculous thing was the townspeople's response. They frantically sobbed and wailed. What? The deputy mayor? That vile demonic filth, oh my, Baek Do-hyun is crying. Don't cry, Lord Do-hyun. The mayor wasn't done performing. He continued to relish the moment, the sorrow of failing to protect the deputy mayor filling his heart with grief since morning. A moment later, Baek Do-hyun straightened abruptly, his smile contorted to the extreme. But now I'm not sad anymore, because the wise supreme goddess has sent us a promising candidate for deputy mayor. He smirked and calmly announced to the people, Today this person will join me in punishing this cunning demon. Baek Do-hyun removed one hand from the railing, his forearm raising slightly toward a certain spot. Then he pointed to a place even higher than himself, his tone bright, as if he had forgotten his earlier tears. That person's name is… On the platform, light suddenly illuminated a man holding a blazing torch. Ryu Min. Ryu Min Seok appeared in a new guise, a black cloth covering his eyes, his face cold and expressionless as the announcer uttered his name, Seok. He stood motionless on the platform without saying a word, letting events unfold as they were staged to. This morning, after kneeling before Baek Do-hyun, Ryu Min Seok had been startled by what the man mentioned, the execution ceremony. The mayor produced a black cloth cap, identical to his own but in black, and beside it lay the still warm body of Kim Sang-jung. The ritual burning of Shinji-woo will take place at 11 p.m. tonight. He ignored him and strode straight to where Ryu Min Seok was kneeling. This should have been my honor, but this time I yield it to you. Baek Do-hyun gently placed the cloth cap on his head, as if sharing some silent authority. Shinji-woo, you carry out the execution order. But the truth proved there was no easy way out. He only wanted to make things difficult for him. Killing the demon is the mission of the blessed, if you accept that mission. So the current Ryu Min Seok held the torch in his hand, his mind still turning over those words. Then I will accept you. Below, when the crowd saw him begin to move as if to drop the torch, they grew even more agitated, like a disgusting cult shrieking in excitement like wild beasts. Even Cha Peng-ho couldn't hide his tension. His face showed horror at witnessing the vain stupidity here. Also this morning, after returning from Baek Do-hyun's room, they had talked. What? Tonight at the execution ceremony, you have to kill someone? Of course, Cha Peng-ho could not accept that. He patted the other's shoulder and ordered, All right, no more discussion, prepare to depart immediately. But Ryu Min Seok decisively shrugged off the hand on his shoulder. In a tone of utter resolve, he rejected that option outright. It cannot be allowed to happen. That provoked Cha Peng-ho to roar in anger. Ryu Min Seok. The terrifying image of the mayor leading once more flashed through his mind, and Ryu Min Seok knew how fearsome he was. As long as Baek Do-hyun remained in Daejeon, that choice was far too dangerous. Speaking as a member of the team, he took all the blame upon himself. Coming to Daejeon and getting entangled in this mess is my responsibility. Ryu Min Seok's words sounded softly, causing those eavesdropping outside the door to hold their breath in tension. I did it for us, no, if anything for Dami. His face suddenly darkened. A thin layer of murderous intent rose as he stared at the blindfold in his hand, and at questions of morality and humanity. Back in the present, as the torch slowly dipped down, the oath he made that night echoed in his head again. I am ready to throw it all away. The flame was like a giant monster. The moment it touched the rope, it raced down with dizzying speed. At the other end of the rope stood the stake where Shinji-woo was tied, and they had even piled scraps of wood around him to ensure the fire would be strong enough to burn a man. The flames hit the pile of kindling and erupted violently. Shinji-woo was seared by blistering heat, his neck veins bulging, and even the black gag couldn't stifle his screams of agony. And that cruel spectacle, to the townspeople, was more beautiful than New Year's fireworks, making them grin madly. Oh, it's burning. At last. At last. "We've killed the demon Shinji Wu," they declared, as his body was completely engulfed by the scorching sea of flames. The wooden stake burned down to char. Unable to withstand the strain, it began to crack and collapse. Only then was Shinji Wu, tightly bound, freed, but that freedom was the consuming heat that incinerated everything, accompanied by the inappropriate gasps of the people he had wanted to protect. Ashes scattered through the black night, the lone light from the torch illuminating Ryu Min-seok's cold, expressionless face. Moments later, Baek Do-hyun suddenly appeared above him, his hand lightly resting on the other's head as a prop. Facing the public, still in that pose, he began speaking loudly into the mic attached to his mouth. "In the name of the divine representative, I hereby declare that..." Baek Do-hyun's mouth opened, and true to his promise, he began bestowing a title upon him. "From this moment, Ryu Min-seok will become Baek Do-hyun's right-hand man. Do you accept?" Ryu Min-seok's lips pressed together in silence. In that moment, something inside him seemed to shift, but very quickly he broke into a smile of submission, like a hound acknowledging its master. "Yes, sir." The new position announced so casually. Baek Do-hyun planted himself on the railing, arms thrown up as he shouted with exhilaration, "Citizens, let's cheer our new vice mayor, Ryu Min-seok. Give him a shout." Below, the crowd caught his fever. The atmosphere suddenly surged. Beside the blaze that had consumed the hero who saved them, the people proudly chanted the name of the man who had ignited the pyre. Ryu Min-seok. Ryu Min-seok. Quickly, the chaos subsided. The modern hotel stood lit against the dark night. The soldiers of the Blue Falcon unit bowed solemnly. Then, "Good night, Vice Mayor Ryu Min-seok." After saying that, they wasted no time and immediately departed. Ryu Min-seok had nothing more to say. He slowly shut the door tight. Sensing someone behind him, he turned his head slowly, revealing a half-profile of sharp, expressionless features. Ryu Dami, Cha Pung-ho, and the members of his brigade watched Ryu Min-seok warily. Clearly, they were still stunned by what had happened. He stood silent there and began to remove the cloth cap and blindfold. A cold, unfamiliar voice slowly sounded. "Pleased to meet you all. Behind the disguise is the face that should have been burned. Shinji Wu." He straightened to face them and introduced himself. "I am Commander Shinji Wu of the Cheongyang forces, under the unified Gye Ryong command. I am Shinji Wu." For a moment, everyone was stunned. Even Cha Pung-ho, who had known the plan beforehand, couldn't contain a crazy, defiant exclamation. "Ryu Min-seok, you truly are a madman." Looking back to this morning, Ryu Min-seok had indeed said, "For Dami, if it's for Dami, I'll cast aside all morality and humanity." But there was a second half to that sentence. He smiled smugly, as if everything had been calculated in his palm. Yet this time, it wasn't so. For a moment, Cha Pung-ho couldn't follow his line of thought. "What?" Ryu Min-seok briefly explained. "Not much time, listen carefully." And his plan unfolded as arranged. "Tonight, I will gain Baek Do-hyun's trust." At that moment, their identities were swapped. As for Shinji Wu, I switched identities to save him. So when the flames like a monstrous blaze licked with flesh-searing heat, someone truly was burned. But that figure was Ryu Min-seok. More than a monster, he somehow stood calm and steady amid the roaring flames, if not for me. The blindfold was pulled down, revealing pupils that flashed from the reflected firelight, something no one could achieve. Nearly impossible. The next day, the engineering crew erected a grand stage for the official vice mayor announcement. Quickly, Baek Do-hyun noticed someone's arrival. His tone grew noticeably warmer. "You're here." Ryu Min-seok smiled and stepped forward to the title the man used. "Vice Mayor." He affected a sheepish smile and apologized first. "My apologies, Lord Baek Do-hyun. I'm a little late." Baek Do-hyun strode up to him in 3 quick steps. His shadowy hand lifted Ryu Min-seok's chin. Ryu Min-seok gave a thin smile. "It's fine. I understand. Could you sleep at all? You just went through something big." Then he tilted his head back slightly and couldn't help laughing loudly. Last night's events still played in Baek Do-hyun's mind during the demon punishment ritual. The vice mayor's face showed no hesitation, which filled me with joy. But that demeanor was only a facade. He suddenly squeezed his cheek, his voice dropping to a threatening timbre. "Anyway, next time you must arrive on time, right?" Ryu Min-seok's pupils contracted at the veiled threat. "I don't like dogs that don't obey their masters. That's not my taste. Understand me." A cold bead of sweat slid down his cheek. He forced a compliant reply. "Yes." Baek Do-hyun released him, turned and waved him off. "There's still some time before the ceremony starts. Let's have some tea to warm up." Seeing the scaffolding rising into a grand stage, he gave a deep, sudden laugh. "Our upcoming vice mayoral inauguration will be a solemn ceremony." After a moment, Baek Do-hyun abruptly turned and asked, "Ah, I heard Shinji Wu was burned cleanly." Not waiting for an answer, He pointed to his own arm as an example. But one part remained, perhaps. The right arm. Back last night, Ryu Min-seok had just opened his right hand, full of burn scars. Shinji Woo sat opposite. Though he had narrowly escaped, he still couldn't quickly adapt to the surreal situation. "I thought I was mentally prepared," he said. His dark gray pupils slowly drilled into the man before him, finishing the half-finished sentence. "It's still hard to forget." Shinji Woo glanced at that body covered in painful burn scars and couldn't help but call out with admiration. Mr. Ryu Min-seok. Ryu Min-seok, by contrast, acted as if everything were perfectly normal. He smiled reassuringly. "It's over. For now, you've come here to avoid people's gazes, though it's not an easy thing." Knowing the other was worried, he replied politely, "I'm fine. Even if I died." Shinji Woo couldn't forget the shock and horror when he suddenly appeared before him. "After all, without you, I probably wouldn't be in this world anymore." Ryu Min-seok put on a false laugh, brushed his hair and joked, "There's still black ash in my hair since this was a rushed plan. This is already quite effective." Shinji Woo rarely complained, but this time admitted ruefully that, although his injuries weren't as bad as yours, honestly, it was still torment. And one of the most exhausting things last night was suppressing his murderous intent, standing in front of Baek Do-hyeon. Holding back his anger was truly difficult. At that, Shinji Woo suddenly changed tone. His voice was serious to the point of unrest. "But from this incident I understood clearly. Even when I fired a shot at that mayor, he could still smile and spring back to his feet." That helplessness made Shinji Woo realize that, "I cannot kill Baek Do-hyeon." But that wasn't the worst outcome. He suddenly lowered his voice to conclude, "And now a new variable has appeared." Shinji Woo opened his eyes and stared straight at him, his jaw twitching as he pointed directly at the man. "It's you, Ryu Min-seok." He bluntly asserted his view. "If it were you, you could eliminate him." Ryu Min-seok wasn't pleased to suddenly become a hero. Instead, he challenged him. "Why me?" For a moment, Shinji Woo couldn't give a satisfactory answer. Ryu Min-seok continued, "Now that I'm the vice mayor, there's no reason for me to do that." He calmly put his jacket back on, his idle tone clarifying their relationship. "Don't get me wrong, my saving you was only because it was something I could do. If there had been no way to save you." Ryu Min-seok placed a hand on his chest, his face grave as he spoke a cruel line. "Then I would not hesitate to kill you." Shinji Woo wasn't offended. On the contrary, he wanted to intercede for him, but Mr. Ryu Min-seok, he was cut off. "I'm a bit curious." Shinji Woo's pupils contracted suddenly as the question, sharp as a blade, struck his brain. "Why do you want to kill Baek Do-hyeon?" Ryu Min-seok, from an outsider's perspective, assessed the villain in both their words very objectively. "I acknowledge his cruelty, but he's also the one who holds Daejeon together, isn't he? Because of that, I want you to produce some piece of information convincing enough for me." Shinji Woo, "Did you discover anything else?" Those words seemed to hit some raw spot in him. Shinji Woo suddenly lunged and smashed the coffee cup on the table. His hand remained clenched in fury, even for a moment pointing a sharp accusation at Ryu Min-seok. "Right now, can what Baek Do-hyeon is doing here ever end? How can you say that?" Shinji Woo stood up, his dark gray eyes flashing with anger as he looked down at the man from above yesterday, and today when he was on the streets. The image of a modern cityscape, eerily quiet in the black night, replayed in Shinji Woo's mind. In a hard voice he asked if he could see any citizens. In a high-rise building amid the silent city, a single window still flickered with a weak white light. Inside that room, the town's residents, faces hollow, all knelt down. Before them lay unmarked drugs, the last flame, hope that would not die. On the TV screen before them was the golden-winged emblem of the goddess, which was also the people's faith here. O Daejeon. Their faces were as pale as wax statues. In a monotone, almost demonic voice, they worshipped O, the miraculous city. Knowing all this well, Shinji Woo even forgot who had saved him as he rose and shouted disrespectfully. Regardless of what Baek Do-hyeon had done, the people now seemed trapped in their homes, unable to move, becoming puppets who only gathered at appointed times. Rage overwhelmed him and he lost control for a few seconds. Shinji Woo stood there dazed, gasping. A look of anger still lingered on his face. He slowly closed his eyes, trying to calm himself. Ryu Min-seok's silence was oppressively absolute, forcing Shinji Woo to concede. All right, I admit it, he held the city with an incredible power, because earlier, when Shinji Woo had worn protective gear, he had witnessed an unbelievable scene. Back then, Baek Do-hyeon fought bare-handed, with no weapons or armor, single-handedly sweeping through the zombies. That image was etched into Shinji Woo's mind, and he had fancied that the man was the hope of the Republic of Korea, a savior who could restore the country. That's what I once thought. Ryu Min-seok listened silently to that past and couldn't help but exclaim, "Sounds familiar, doesn't it?" Lord Peng-ho, eavesdropping outside, sneezed loudly as if sensing someone mentioning him. He then cast a puzzled look at the two who appeared rather unsettled in the room. By now, Shin Ji-woo had steadied himself. He slowly recounted what he had discovered. "I protected Daejeon with Baek Do-hyun, but something was very wrong. The secured area kept expanding, yet we could hardly find any survivors." Without pausing, he continued, "Then one day, when my team and I searched the foot of Maebong Mountain, we found an abandoned warehouse. And inside it was a scene Shin Ji-woo would never forget in his life. We were confronted with a truth. In that abandoned warehouse, a damp, rotten stench rose up, leaving the whole Blue Hawk unit stunned. Bodies hung like slaughtered pigs, and in the center of the warehouse their venerable mayor bowed like a wild animal, greedily tearing at the flesh and blood of his own people." Realizing someone had come, he stopped his actions and slowly raised his head. Baek Do-hyun smiled in revulsion. His eyes were rimmed entirely in red, and his low voice trembled dangerously. "You see now, huh?" In the reconnaissance unit, Shin Ji-woo was the first to react. Baek Do-hyun. The sight was so inhuman that he couldn't help letting out a furious roar, filled with hatred. "Baek Do-hyun." A sharp gust of wind answered him, knocking his helmet off. The other teammates were not so fortunate. All were killed under Baek Do-hyun's brutal hands, which easily tore people apart. Back in the present, he lightly touched the raised scar on his forehead, the only proof that that night had really happened. Shin Ji-woo changed his tone, becoming completely earnest as he begged the man before him. "Please, Ryu Min-seok, the one who can restore Daejeon." Ryu Min-seok silently bowed his head, quietly feeling a weight of responsibility suddenly pressed down on him. Only he could bear it. His lips moved slightly, speaking words that seemed casual. "Consider that remark as if I never heard it." Shin Ji-woo couldn't believe his ears. He shouted the other's name, "Mr. Ryu Min-seok," but Ryu Min-seok only coldly turned away. "If you oppose Baek Do-hyun's wishes in Daejeon, I cannot guarantee my daughter's safety." He began to step toward the door, slowly trying to end the fruitless conversation. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a father who wants to survive with his daughter." But as he turned, Ryu Min-seok met his daughter's eyes. Ryu Dami, as if understanding what he meant, softly called, "Dad." Ryu Min-seok grew suddenly flustered. "Dami, when did you get here?" She held out the item in her hands to him and gently said, "Ah, I brought a hygiene kit for you to use to wash." Still worried about his careless words, he hurried to explain, Dami, what I just said was..." Ryu Dami, slightly embarrassed. "What?" Which surprised him. "Huh," then she added, "I didn't hear anything." Not wanting to linger and disrupt them, Ryu Dami decided to leave at once. "I'm going now." He nodded. "Okay, good night, Dami." From behind, Shin Ji-woo had noticed the one thing that caught his attention. He spoke up. "Mr. Ryu Min-seok." Shin Ji-woo's eyes darkened, precisely fixing on that inverted scale. He truly thought it was Baek Do-hyun. Ryu Min-seok's brows knitted tightly in tension as he silently listened to those unfortunate words. Did they have nothing to do with him? Back in the present, Ryu Min-seok merely smiled innocently as he watched Baek Do-hyun, who showed no suspicion. His face maintained that harmless smile, his eyes narrowing slightly to hide the killing intent within. Through the mini-comm device on his right ear, Shin Ji-woo's steady voice calmly came through. "This is Alpha, Daejeon Expeditionary Team. Confirm leaving Daejeon." What happened the rest of last night was revealed by Shin Ji-woo, who had long harbored suspicion. At Baek Do-hyun's gatherings, all the citizens of Daejeon attended. Didn't you notice anything then? Now, Ryu Min-seok's limp hand had clenched so tightly that veins stood out. In the next moment, each joint of his fingers spread wide, channeling all his strength to his fingertips. Shin Ji-woo's words continued to ring out. The image of the maddened citizens remained vivid in their minds. Among all those people, why? His face hardened as he seriously pointed out the town's obscurity. Only young women were missing. For Ryu Dami's safety, Ryu Min-seok didn't even consider his own safety. He suddenly lunged forward, his right arm reaching straight for Baek Do-hyun. His body was swift as a blade, slicing past. When that arm swung, the man's head was easily severed with no warning at all. And Ryu Min-seok, with the metallic stench of blood rising, his face became more terrifying than ever. A soldier barked an order. "At ease. Attention," he continued, issuing the troop commands. Immediately after, the soldiers raised their hands in a solemn salute as a greeting. The small trucks carrying the expedition began to leave the city's ramparts. So the Daejeon Expeditionary Force, except for Ryu Min-seok, had successfully escaped. Everything felt too easy. Jaehan was a bit stunned. "We can get out that easily?" "So, why were we worried from the start?" Lee and Hui hurriedly replied, "No, it's that things have become easier. An answer that left the guy wide-eyed. His gaze never left the rearview mirror as he watched the soldier's movements. Lee In-hui analyzed. If movement were truly free, then what about those armed gate guards? How could they look like that? He said. Not without reason, look at the gate guards' faces. They seem resentful. Lee In-hui's account briefly brought to mind Ryu Min-sok ordering the guards. They were simply following orders and not allowed to disobey. Jaehan still found it hard to believe and hesitated. Even so, isn't it a bit much that he rose to vice mayor? Or is there another scheme, bribery, or some secret way to slip out? Lee In-hui sighed helplessly at his colleague's stupidity. You really don't look at reality. Offended, Jaehan growled with some anger. What? He didn't hesitate to explain. This method has the highest probability, because Dami's chance of surviving safely is the greatest. Actually, anyone can see Ryu Min-sok's motive. He needs to save his child. Ryu Min-sok only wants his daughter to be safe. He doesn't care what happens to himself. In the other vehicle, Ryu Dami's emotions were in turmoil. She seemed very furious as well. Suddenly, Cha Peng-ho spoke to draw her attention. Hey kid. Smiling to reassure the child before him, he actually knew how to comfort. What's wrong? Worried about your father being alone in there. Yesterday, Min-seok said he was just stepping out for a bit and would come back soon. Right? Ryu Dami's face remained pensive along the way. Cha Peng-ho had to continue. Don't worry. After hesitating for a while, she finally spoke up. My father, Ryu Dami said in an even tone, tinged with sadness, always taking the loss and living like a klutz. Then painful memories surfaced. When she was a high school girl, her father tried to be humble to avoid trouble for his daughter. It's not his fault, but he would always apologize first. To be honest, she hated that. But when she was in middle school, in that past incident, a thug flicked a cigarette butt at Ryu Min-seok and Ryu Dami. It was intentional and it flew straight into her face, burning her cheek and making her cry out in pain. Ryu Dami could not forget when Ryu Min-seok seemed to become a different person. The thugs had awakened a demon in him. At that moment, her father transformed into someone else. The gentle father in Ryu Dami's memory actually jumped in and beat and punched the two men until they bled. Ryu Min-seok's hands were stained red. If the police hadn't intervened, he might have beaten them to death. It was the first time she saw her father so furious. Ryu Dami hesitated, but last night she saw her father like that once more. Recalling that night in the building corridor, Dami had accidentally seen something she shouldn't have. It was when Ryu Min-seok was talking with Shin Ji-woo, the face she had seen back in middle school. That face, those eyes, that expression exactly like the monster that had threatened Ryu Dami before. But that didn't make her afraid of her father. Ryu's body trembled as she continued speaking to Cha Peng-ho. I won't ask what will happen anymore, so I only ask one thing. She mouthed it like a child, begging for the only lifeline in life. Dad, can you and my dad come back safely? To this colonel, he said little. He simply reached out and tapped the girl's temple lightly. The large hand touched Ryu Dami's head like a grandfather comforting his little granddaughter. How could he not come back, with such a good daughter worrying about her father? Cha Peng-ho smiled with narrowed eyes, his tone firm so as not to worry her further. After all, this mission isn't what Ryu Min-seok wanted. You must be sad from not talking for days, right? I can promise you one thing. Your father, Ryu Min-seok, will return soon. Tears welled at the corner of Ryu Dami's eyes. She smiled lightly, answered him, and nodded. Having comforted the child, the colonel smiled with mild pleasure. But before he could fully relax, Cha Peng-ho suddenly noticed something amiss. His hand was now drenched in sweat. Could the colonel himself be secretly worried? Unable to deceive himself, Cha Peng-ho muttered, Min-seok, I never doubted you. His deep blue eyes showed anxiety, his thick brows knitted. But be careful, because Baekdo Hyeon At that moment, Ryu Min-seok had just struck Baekdo Hyeon. Only the blanket covering his head lay on the doorstep. Killing intent radiated from his body, his eyes burning red as if to incinerate his opponent. Not an easy prey, indeed. Even decapitated, Baekdo Hyeon's body lunged toward him. Ryu Min-seok, of course, couldn't be outdone. He delivered a blow that sent the opponent's body flying backward. That force pushed Ryu Min-seok back, scraping the floor hard. Fortunately, he wasn't hit. The monster was still alive. It snarled. Why? Baekdo Hyeon's hand lifted the severed head, still reproaching him. Baekdo Hyeon trusted you like this. Setting his head down gently as if assembling a toy, Baekdo Hyeon fully revived and asked, Why did you choose to betray me? Finding it ridiculous, Ryu Min-seok bent and replied sarcastically, Wrong. I never belonged to your side for even a second. As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed in to prepare a finishing strike. But it wasn't that easy. The creature raised its sturdy arm to defend, nullifying Ryu Min-seok's punch. Baekdo Hyeon laughed with amusement, disdain and derision. Ha, how sad. One blessed by the goddess falling into such a demon is heartbreaking. He eased off his vest as if using his aura to overwhelm his foe. Have you forgotten how my power dominates you? With such terrifying strength. Of course, Baek Do-hyun wouldn't yield. You cannot defeat me. But it seemed he'd celebrated too soon. Baek Do-hyun's earlier arm bent like a ruler, surprising the mayor of Daejeonha. Not missing the golden opportunity, Ryu Min-seok immediately aimed a strike at his vulnerable spot. Taken by surprise, Baek Do-hyun couldn't block in time. His hulking body slammed into the wall, denting it. Half his body was mangled and oozing like a cripple. Shocked by Ryu Min-seok's power, Baek Do-hyun couldn't believe what he'd witnessed. What is this? Ryu Min-seok showed no mercy, charging like a beast at the mayor. His eyes were blood red like a monster's. Baek Do-hyun's body couldn't move. He was about to die. Too fast. Wait, I'm not recovered yet. In any case, he tried to leap up to dodge the blow, otherwise Baek Do-hyun would have fallen into the pit, causing Ryu Min-seok to miss again. No, not exactly. It seems his target wasn't the upper body, because his left leg was already smashed. Even Baek Do-hyun was stunned. Impossible. Clearly that guy's strength. Just enough to bend my finger. He recalled the pathetic power that only made his hand sting. Perhaps Baek Do-hyun had underestimated Ryu Min-seok. His face twisted. Baek Do-hyun ground his teeth. Since becoming the chosen one, this was the first time he'd felt such pain. Ryu Min-seok kept striking so Baek Do-hyun couldn't retaliate. Even he couldn't explain how could he grow so strong in such a short time. Ryu Min-seok paid it no mind. He raised that bloodied fist again, rushing to finish the foe quickly. Ryu Min-seok's determination stemmed from a simple reason. Running wouldn't solve it. Baek Do-hyun would hunt us down. He had to protect that innocent look on Ryu Dami's facetious family, his most precious treasure and all he had. He was resolved to keep Ryu Dami alive. If Dami was in danger, there was only one way. Clenching his jaw, Ryu Min-seok growled like a wild beast. Baek Do-hyun, I'll destroy you right here. Then he lunged powerfully with a punch toward his opponent. Baek Do-hyun flinched like a cowering dog, tail between his legs. Wait. It seemed this distracted Ryu Min-seok. Sure enough, he missed. Baek Do-hyun successfully dodged and preserved his life. The guards, though shaken, raised their guns to threaten. Vice Mayor, what are you doing? Mayor Baek Do-hyun, are you all right? It seemed those two men were unlucky. Baek Do-hyun was the one who finished them off. He opened his mouth wide and greedily devoured them to recover. This gruesome sight stunned Ryu Min-seok for a moment, but as soon as he recognized the intent, he ran over to stop it. The creature recovered. They'd be doomed. Too late. Ryu Min-seok took a blow square to the face. The force was terrifying. His body was hurled far away. Luckily, Ryu Min-seok was still alive, but it was too late. His face twisted in contradiction. It's ruined. In an instant, Baek Do-hyun's body, once on par with Ryu Min-seok, had doubled or even tripled in size, bulging muscles and veins like a demon. Apparently eating the two guards had given him overwhelming strength. His voice thick, mouth still chewing bloody flesh. There was no human left to see in Mayor Baek Do-hyun now. Unbelievable. I gathered the trash and turned it to shine. What did you say? You dare strike me down? The demon had truly awakened. A sinister aura spread that made anyone wear so. Let's see. His sharp eyes flashed. Baek Do-hyun, thirsty for blood with this power, taunted Ryu Min-seok. I will show you how much the beloved goddess Baek Do-hyun cherishes him. Inside a house wrapped in the skin of a temple, white, righteous, virtuous, the gentle truth of purity. He declared one thing, that I am a god. I am set apart from the masses. I am someone who can do anything. That is me. Then he cast a piercing look toward the congregation. Follow me, worship me, Baek Do-hyun. I will save all of you. Their faces lit with delight at Do-hyun. But for a moment he snapped back to reality, because the things he had built out there were being destroyed by waves of zombies. At the same time, loud knocking came from outside. Lord Baek Do-hyun. The worshippers lost their senses, went mad and rioted. Is this the day of doom you prophesied? If so, please save us. They were all agitated. Why won't you say anything? Haven't you been afflicted? Come out. They were so frightened, they smashed the room's door. After breaking the lock and entering, everyone anxiously questioned him. Lord Baek Do-hyun, are you all right? Save us. They suddenly saw him stuffing a large sack with all the money from the safe. They were stunned. Lord Baek Do-hyun, what are you doing? When discovered, he grabbed the briefcase and ran. Get out of the way. They were furious, veins bulging. Cult leader Baek Do-hyun stole the money and ran catch him, and within seconds they had seized him. Do-hyun struggled. Let go. I am Baek Do-hyun, he screamed. I am a god. After a while they tied Do-hyun to a post, then set him on fire to make the finest meat skewer in the world. Another person spoke for all the worshippers, shouting in anger. The god Giryong raged at the crime of cult leader Baek Do-hyun, whose heart had been taken by demons. Pluck out those cunning eyes and burn that filthy body to appease the god's wrath. Meanwhile, Do-hyun kept begging, "It's too hot, please save me. Please, anyone, save me." Suddenly a god appeared before him. The deity smiled kindly at him, as his flesh was being burned away. Because of the god's appearance, the flames burned even more fiercely, causing the logs inside to burst and scatter. At that moment, he returned from death. Baek Do-hyun was granted the right to be different, to be loved to the extent that anything he did could become reality. His eyes were filled with hatred, his face slowly contorted beyond description. I am the representative of the god. Returning to the present, he squeezed one man's throat. He then jumped up, driving force into his feet. Then he dove at Min Seok immediately. Because his speed was so fast, he could only stand and dodge without being able to move. After the first move, he immediately executed a second. Do-hyun's whole body radiated killing intent, like a giant beast toying with a rat, and in an instant he grabbed him with his hand. But somehow he clipped half of Min Seok's face and blood sprayed everywhere. Not stopping there, Do-hyun swung his arm backward, and to gather force and then strike toward him. Seeing his opponent jump, he jumped after him. So his opponent couldn't escape. He then squeezed Min Seok's face hard, then threw him forward, causing him to hit the ground 5 times, so hard that the floor cracked in 2. When finished, Do-hyun calmly asked, "What's wrong? Is that all you've got? With that little strength you dare face the love I've been granted? How disappointing." Ryu Min Seok. Suddenly his gaze fixed on him. "Ah, now I understand. Why would the goddess send a vicious demon like you to Baek Do-hyun?" When he saw the light radiating all over Min Seok's body, it enraged him. Blessed by the goddess, I will judge that filthy sin. The god trusts no one but Baek Do-hyun. O goddess Giryong, please forgive this foolish awakened one, with the pain that I now must beg you for. Kill that cunning demon, the remnants, and, saying that, he excitedly launched himself forward, even at that blood relative. But as he prepared to crush him once more, suddenly Min Seok regained consciousness and recovered his body at that moment. Min Seok remained standing still, waiting for the right moment, because the spot he had been thrown to was the place with the strongest light, prepared in advance by someone else, and when the time was ripe, he would spring up, all the lights from above, to in front of him. Because of the influence of that blinding light, his vision began to blur, and Do-hyun's eyes quickly fell into a temporary blindness, causing him to fall flat before he could seize his prey. Do-hyun stood up in a daze. His mood was somewhat puzzled. Then suddenly Min Seok's voice rang out. Night vision. Due to innate or acquired factors causing damage to the visual nerves, vision only perceives the shape of moving objects. The neural senses are keener than ordinary people, but the recovery speed of vision is many times slower. People with such special vision must be most cautious of one thing: intense light. Now his eyes were nothing but milky white, making him frantic as he wildly searched for him, trying 3 useless tricks. Don't be noisy, come out here now. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness crept into his head. The intense light and loud noise directly affected the brain, accompanied by neural convulsions. Suppose the nervous system exceeds human limits, then you will feel even more pain. Min Seok emerged from there right in front of Do-hyun. In blessing mode, all the senses are currently beyond human limits. Perhaps that's why every nerve is running wild. Do-hyun fumed. That bastard, could he have predicted all of this? At first he pretended to use strength to provoke me, to awaken my power. Then he acted overwhelmed by my power and lured me here. Everything from beginning to end was all part of his plan? The more Do-hyun thought, the angrier he became. Ryu Min Seok. Min Seok replied calmly. You're not wrong about the power and speed. You're far stronger than me. You seem to believe you're receiving great love. But do you know something? Something that surpasses the power of the love you received. Then Min Seok took a power-enhancing aid from his pocket and pressed it to his hand. It was the power of a father's profound love for his daughter. Driven by the desire to protect his little daughter, Ryu Min Seok was forced to stand strong and confront him. 3 hours and 27 minutes had passed. Min Seok's hands were soaked in blood. Brutal punches kept raining down. Min Seok's pupils were blazing red, his hands dripping blood. Do-hyun had been punched until he couldn't get up. Baek Do-hyun's body was mangled. Jiwoo stood frozen at the door, staring at the scene. He was convinced the man couldn't recover. Only then did Min Seok toss the 2 iron rings to the ground. He slowly stood and looked at his handiwork. Ryu Min Seok done. Jiwoo stepped forward, looking at him with a cold smile. Baek Do-hyun, I never thought I'd see him taken down like this. That's impressive, Ryu Min Seok. Min Seok replied politely, saying it was all thanks to Captain Shin Juwoo here. You helped me a lot. All the information on Baekdu Hyun came from you. Juwoo pressed his lips together, eyes wary as he looked at him. No, even if blinded, even if Baekdu Hyun's psychosis worsened, he would not be felled so easily. The bloody scene replayed in his mind. The reason Ryu Min-seok won was that he was far stronger than him. The two exchanged a few words. Du Hyun's body now looked like a heap of mangled flesh. In his head, the goddess Jaeryong's voice rang out. Her mouth kept repeating one line, get up. Immediately, Du Hyun's twisted body forced itself upright. The shattered body began to move. A blood-curdling scream accompanied it. Fresh blood stained a wide area red. The two men were horrified by the sight. Only then did Juwoo clearly see what lay before him, a grotesque monster. Its wrinkled outer shell and sunken eye sockets were pitch black. Juwoo raised his gun and looked at Min-seok. Baekdu Hyun is still alive. Have you never seen this form before? Stay calm and analyze it. Tardage, a high-level variant resembling a water bear. Hearing this, Juwoo frowned and interrupted him. Wait, Ryu Min-seok, what are you saying? Min-seok didn't avert his eyes, his tone firm. I'm not wrong. A monstrosity. His pupils constricted in silent horror. Unbelievable. Baekdu Hyun's true identity. It was a super-class monstrosity. Before Juwoo could recover, he grabbed his wrist and shouted, run. If it truly is a tardage, its characteristic is, the monster chases them. Seconds later it would mutate and run faster. At the same time outside, Juwoo's team members whispered to each other, what's going on? I heard a loud noise inside, but when we entered, there were no guards. Another said, you know how the former vice mayor disappeared, right? Hearing that, the other hesitated. It's more than 3 hours past schedule. This never happened before. Could something really be wrong? Someone immediately retorted, hey, are you sober? Don't you know what kind of man Baekdu Hyun is? Probably just tied up with urgent matters. He'll show up soon. No sooner had the words ended than the tower exploded. The loud blast drew the curious crowd. The monster surfaced with a mouth full of sharp fangs. Those in the hall panicked. The expo tower's destroyed. What is that enormous thing? A giant monster has appeared. The guards also panicked and fell back onto the ground. They screamed in terror. Chaos erupted as people shoved each other and fled. They couldn't believe it. What the hell is this? Wasn't the expo tower where Baekdu Hyun was? Where is he? The monster closed in, causing people to scream, help me! It even breathed fire. Juwoo finally appeared, drawing its attention. Over here. Baekdu Hyun. The monster lunged forward. As it dove, Juwoo tightened the rope and rappelled down. The moment he hit the ground, he opened fire on it. Pursued, he jumped on a motorcycle and sped off. He strained to buy more time. Earlier, Min-seok had said it was useless. Juwoo froze. Min-seok explained that its outer shell was far harder than reinforced steel, and the harder it was struck, the more its tissue structure reverted to its original state. The monster opened its jaws and pursued him relentlessly. Juwoo ran while constantly gauging the distance. He gritted his teeth as the bike weaved in zigzags. Just as the bike surged forward, he leapt off. The monster looked at Juwoo with satisfaction. It opened its tooth-filled mouth to bite. Juwoo remained motionless. Remember to lure it, right? Min-seok replied that while its shell was indeed tough, its internal organs were surprisingly fragile. Juwoo, lure it into the expo tower. We'll finish it off right there. As planned, Min-seok stood ready with his weapon. He wound up the chainsaw. The engine roared as the blade spun. Min-seok lunged forward. He jumped straight into the monster's mouth. The chainsaw thundered inside the creature's body. The intense pain made it roar. After a barrage, the saw blade appeared. The creature's body began to stagger. It screamed. The saw blade tore back and forth, ripping its body to shreds. After the onslaught, Min-seok finally surfaced. Fresh blood spurted out. The monster let out a thunderous roar. It convulsed one last time, and Min-seok drove the saw down again. Seeing that, Juwoo stood with his mouth agape. Du Hyun's men were also frozen. The group at Dami had witnessed everything. Horror was written all over her face. The monster had been sliced into pieces. 1926-27, the variant of Baekdu Hyun, a tardage, had been destroyed. The blood-soaked saw blade plunged down, reclaiming Daejeon. Successfully. Du Hyun's followers cried out, Lord Baekdu Hyun. They regained their senses and looked at each other. What on earth is happening? What was that monster? The tower where Lord Baekdu Hyun was has collapsed. Is he dead? Someone say something. They all bowed, tears in their eyes. Are you there, Lord Baekdu Hyun? Don't abandon us, Lord Baekdu Hyun. Du Hyun's severed head hesitated. Do you hear me? Do you hear how much they crave me? Hear this clearly. What am I to them? The crowd, hearing his voice, cheered Lord Baekdu Hyun. Oh my god, Lord Baekdu Hyun. Min-seok glanced that way and snorted coldly. You still alive? Persistent as a leech, I see. The man sneered. What you say? I'm still alive. Because I absolutely cannot die even if this body rots away. As long as the people continue to worship Baekdu Hyun, I will live forever in this city. As soon as he finished, Min-seok stepped on his head. He knelt and smiled coldly. Foolish to the end. Have you forgotten the only person in Daejeon who never worshipped you? Hearing that, the man narrowed his eyes. Cut tall, the screen replayed Du Hyan's video. The crowd covered their mouths in horror. What is this? That video? No way. Is that real? The brutal scene made them doubt. Is that really Lord Baek Du Hyan? At that moment, Jiwoo appeared before them. The recovered crowd looked at the newcomer, the soldier who'd killed the monster earlier. Wait, isn't that Shin Jiwoo? Hearing this, they cried out in astonishment. What? Impossible. How could it be Shin Jiwoo? He was clearly dead during last night's execution. Shin Jiwoo is still alive. Is that Shin Jiwoo who saved us from that monster? What on earth is going on? Memories surged back. Min Seok had said if Baek Du Hyan disappeared, Daejin would descend into chaos. And to quell that chaos, we need a new leader. I ask again, are you sure you re different from Baek Du Hyan? Shin Jiwoo, can you rebuild Daejin? Jiwoo began to shout. The roar echoed like a fierce tiger. The crowd looked up at him in astonishment. Jiwoo continued. Once it quieted, he took a deep breath. The bloody scenes surged back, that haunting smile. He looked at the people. Once more Jiwoo screamed. The crowd fell silent. For a moment they stood dazed. They slowly raised their hands, fingers curled into fists. The crowd cheered in response. Meanwhile, Min Seok mocked Du Hyan, stepping on his head. Listen well. Baek Du Hyan, Daejin will be reborn. No one will remember you. Power gained by exploiting people's will. No matter how strong, it can never match the strength that defends their will. Go to hell and look closely. The man went mad, yelling the name Ryu Min Seok. He crushed the man without mercy. On October 2026, workers began cleaning up. Everything ended with Baek Du Hyan's death. Jiwoo stepped forward, punched a comrade in the chest, and smiled at him. From now on, Daejin was being rebuilt, though remnants of him still lingered throughout the city. Dami turned back to look at him, worry on her face. They smiled at him. Shin Jiwoo. With him, the city would surely head in the right direction. Remember, on October 2026, returning to the assembly area under Colonel Pung Ho's command was slightly delayed, but contrary to his worry, the action regiment was even stronger and more resilient against zombie attacks than we were. The soldiers under his command wept. Colonel, wasn't that too much? We were terrified something serious had happened. We thought you'd abandoned us. Pung Ho joked to ease the mood. Alright, I'm glad too. Someone else asked, what about Daejin? Will it really be peaceful? Over here, Jaein suddenly asked, where's Ryu Min Seok? Hi Refroza. Pung Ho's voice rang out. Everyone, gather at the stadium. Starting today, our regiment will enter a state of large-scale relocation readiness. Meanwhile, Min Seok stood on the balcony. Relaxed, he smiled. It's done. After enduring so many ordeals, Dami and I have finally been able to settle in Daejin. He paused and looked at his hand, gazing toward the horizon. He thought, yet after this incident, I faced a hard truth to accept, that in this life, no matter how secure a shelter is, as long as the zombies exist, then I cannot absolutely guarantee Dami's future. In the end, there's only one way left. Wait and see. Whatever it is, if it dares threaten Dami's life, I will not let it exist. I will make the Daejin base the center. The remaining zombies across all of Korea, not a single one will be allowed to escape. I will kill them all. Thus, the Daejeon expedition team finished. Cut scene at the Daedeok military in Daejeon City. The duty crew reported anxiously, manager, water levels 170 meters, still within safe range. But we must keep draining. Water influx is too fast. And if the pump overloads, power supply to Axe will fail. Hearing this, the manager ordered the priority now is to lower the water level. Get inside the building, call Minhan. And now he sprang into action, turning to shout, hey Park Minhan, what are you still standing there for? Hey, it's very dangerous. Tears streamed down his face. He could only gasp a few words. The other still didn't understand. He glanced at the raindrops and his expression changed. The drops poured down in torrents. They originated from an eye in the sky. The commander spoke into the radio. Acknowledge, respond clearly. He grew more anxious with no reply. This is Jai Ryong. Alpha, acknowledge, respond. Worry crept over his face as he reported to the commander. It's been an hour since contact with Daejin was lost. Not certain. But could it be? The normally firm voice now trembled. Have all the cities of Korea been overrun by zombies? At the phone station, people panicked. Commander, something big has happened. He worried. What is it? Without hesitation he shouted. Within a 10-meter radius, an enormous number of zombies have appeared. The starving zombies ran wildly. The situation worsened as they concentrated toward Jai Ryong, heading straight for us. He jumped up, flustered. Commander, what do we do now? Urgent calls also rang over the radio. Commander. His brows knit as he pondered a counterplan. To ensure survivors' safety, he decided all operations staff immediately moved to the basement. Officer unwilling, protested. Commander, you can't be serious. Absolutely not. He shouted in frustration. If we use that option, the whole world could be destroyed. He helpless against the resistance. Barked. Korea has truly collapsed. This is the only way to create a chance to counterattack. He still resisted, but then another voice cut in. This is Jai Ryong. Acknowledge, respond. He frustrated and about to leave in despair. There's no other option when suddenly a corporal cheered. Commander, we have a reply. He halted and rushed to check. What? Really? The corporal nodded repeatedly yes, but not from Daejun, although the signal was cut off immediately after. The screen showed warnings mixed with successful connection lines. But the message did come from the unit that had to go. Seeing that positive sign, he thought carefully, all right, trust once more. This is the most advanced shelter, not a drop of water is allowed in it, zombies cannot breach it. To rally everyone's fighting spirit, he declared loudly, we must fight to the end, even if we can only reclaim one city. Korea can counterattack. While speaking, he suddenly stopped. Something had fallen. He was surprised, not recognizing what the liquid was. Those trembling eyes looked up at the ceiling. The cracks were covered with globs of slime. They had pooled and stuck together as if hiding something behind them. Perhaps it was an eye of blood, red eye, that made the commander freeze, spine chilled, unable to move. On the 7th day after Daejun's reconstruction, Pungho was asked for a status update over the radio. How are things progressing? Office of the Colonel, Seed Mechanized Brigade. It was Ryu Min-seok that had clearly annoyed him. Don't ask me, Ryu Min-seok, this is taking longer than you think. He began recounting the hardship. We've led over 2,000 people, no matter how careful we are, it's never enough. He chuckled. We'll try to coordinate closely. Pungho complained that his tone sounded odd today. It's not long since you arrived in Daejun. Why so stiff? He pressed. Have you convinced your subordinates? He laughed proudly. Convinced. My soldiers do what I tell them except one. Min-seok, curious, asked. One person? He answered mysteriously, no need to ask. Guessing he didn't remember. Pungho revealed with delight, that girl Hai-ri. She's so strong she can overwhelm anyone. And now she's doing push-ups 45, 46. My only concern is Dammy's safety. Her mind filled with Min-seok's image. Whatever the brigade does doesn't concern me. Thinking of that made her heart burn faster and faster. 47, 40. Hai-ri pictured the boy who once picked flowers for her. The memory was really painful for her, making her so lost in thought she forgot what she was doing and fell. She propped herself up and sat to rest. Her expression was a bit irritated at the interruption. Damn it. Pungho warned over the radio that the girl said she couldn't trust your words and seemed to be getting tired of you. She's the infch type. Min-seok quickly replied, yes, I understand, but she won't react that strongly. Don't worry, my subordinates aren't stupid, they know how important this is. Yes, the colonel's remark was very true. A week earlier, we had retaken Daejun, but to prevent the threat from returning at any time, our forces are still too few, and Pungho's brigade is currently the strongest unit in Korea. If the strongest force combined with Daejun's infrastructure to develop together, Daejun would become the starting point for rebuilding Korea. Min-seok encouraged him, surprising him briefly. I hope the colonel will prepare thoroughly. Min-seok affirmed that before the colonel arrives, all preparation will be completed. The general staff under the Ministry of Defense, the heart of the military. Shin Ju-woo was surprised to hear the unfamiliar name Kalung Terrace. Do you mean we were going to the general staff? Min-seok nodded solemnly. Yes. In my previous life, when I came to Daejun, the city's military capability was weak. At that time the monsters that appeared were only at a generalist level, so Shin Ji-woo's command ability alone was enough to defend. A few years later I found documents in the recaptured Dunsan government headquarters, top secret, top control, codename Heart, the southern Daejun unification area, Kalung Terrace, basement. What was kept absolutely secret from the outside world were highly classified military assets. When those devices were put into operation to strengthen Daejun, even the high-level monsters that later appeared were destroyed. But now there is no reason or time to wait a few more years. We need the power to defend Daejun before new variables appear. He was thinking, when suddenly footsteps reached his ear. Two people, a man and a woman, were sent. Cheongmei Unit Lieutenant Jung-hyun, Cheongmei Unit Lieutenant Han-ni. Recalling Shin Ju-woo's earlier instructions, he guessed these were the two of those I trust. Take 2 of the 10. They had resisted and refused to obey Baekdu-hyun, so they were detained in the exhibition basement. Even Baekdu-hyun had to keep them alive instead of killing them, because their loyalty ran so deep they'd stake their lives. Thinking this strengthened Min-seok's resolve, he briefed them. They'll all be useful if my memory is right. The path down to Jae-ryong's basement won't be easy. He asked, challenging yet demanding their resolve. Is everyone ready? They answered in unison. Then let's go. Under the thunderstorm, the three turned away together with determination to bring back the heart of the Korean military. From the dark night sky, a lightning bolt suddenly struck the building, Kalung Terrace. In the top secret basement below, a terrifying pack of zombies roamed the room. Suddenly they heard a loud noise coming from the other side. The zombies immediately rushed toward the sound, squealing loudly. They didn't notice 3 bombs placed in the middle of the path and stepped on them. Instantly the bombs detonated, blasting the horde away as pain screams rang out. Nearby agents in full gear held rifles. They then precisely shot through the heads of the zombies still charging. But one after another they kept rushing forward. They even climbed over each other, but all were killed by the agent's fire. The two wasted no time, continuously shooting them one by one. After clearing them out, Hentani struggled to remove his heavy helmet. Jung Hyun followed suit and took his off. Eyes wide, I didn't expect a place like this under Kilung Terrace. Though it's been a while since we teamed up. We did well. Hentani frowned and replied, yeah, we're still in sync. But she frowned, alertly scanning the surroundings. Still cannot compare to that person Deputy Mayor Ryu Min-seok, who with Mayor Shin Ji-woo finished off Baekdu Hyun and restored Daejeon. Hentani stared at his back in amazement, thinking that seeing him in person revealed just how formidable he truly was. Ryu Min-seok noticed her intent gaze, and did not look away but smiled. Tanai was briefly surprised by that. She mumbled shyly a few words. Jung Hyun paid no mind and said honestly, us coming along isn't really necessary, the deputy mayor can handle it himself. Ryu Min-seok smiled and replied, no, you've helped me a lot, and from now on. He looked at the closed door ahead. So for alone I couldn't possibly deal with it. K-57, the mandatory area to pass through to reach the military arms storage. After the door opens, 2 cannibal creatures will ambush. But the most haunting memory here is something else. Behind the northern area there is a small annex room. Inside were corpses that had just died, 11 in total. They were not infected, merely dead bodies. They had endured in that darkness for over a year, awaiting approval but never escaping. Can we save them this time? Thinking that, Ryu Min-seok gently entered the door code. Jung Hyun asked, this is a top secret area, how do you know the location and access code? He answered, it's a long story, just say I accidentally read an important document. Once the door opens the cannibals will attack immediately. Now the real fight inside the basement truly begins. The door slowly opened. The 3 immediately took defensive positions, ready to fight. Inside, a man in uniform with a pale face stared at them. Then 2 more likewise emerged slowly from the darkness, staring at them without blinking. Hentani and Jung Hyun, seeing the scene clearly, cried out in alarm, that's not a cannibal monster, there are living people here. They turned to Ryu Min-seok, no cannibals but survivors. Instead this time his prediction was wrong. Before he could finish speaking, he froze, seeing a cold glare directed inside, eyes wide. Then they followed his gaze and glanced inside. Jung Hyun again faced those people. Unexpectedly they had now become zombies, with tendrils sprouting all over their bodies. Behind them, a horrifying monster roared. The 3 were horrified at the clear scene inside. Behind, they spotted cannibals. But that monster, something was off. They saw something like organs, livers, and kidneys scattered on the floor. Before they could think, the monster opened its mouth and lunged. Jung Hyun blankly watched something flying toward his body. Then he jerked, eyes wide in shock. What is that? His whole body trembled. Hentani beside him asked, Lieutenant, what's wrong with you? In an instant, tendrils sprouted from his body, just like those on the uniformed men earlier. Jung Hyun's body split in 2, upper and lower halves separated. Hentani screamed in fear, Lieutenant, Ryu Min-seok beside her quickly scooped her up. Then without another word he grabbed her hand and ran. He furrowed his brow, thinking parasiter, the kind that devours hosts alive and seizes bodies, an omnivorous parasitic species. Its reproduction rate exceeded all human imagination. It didn't distinguish between humans and monsters. All survivors in the area had been swallowed by parasitors, so why was it inside this facility? Focus, Ryu Min-seok, get away from that creature first, and absolutely do not let it escape this basement. If it breaches and moves to neighboring cities, Daejeon will be in danger. At the same time outside the city, raindrops pattered down. At the shooting range, target practice. Her shot group had steadied compared to this morning. Shin Ji-woo looked at the target, but the horizontal dispersion was still too large. I'll reassess after reinforced training. He turned and asked, clear, Dammy? Ryu Dammy replied anxiously, yes. Earlier Dammy bowed her head to Shin Ji-woo and said, please help me. I know that in this insane world it's nearly impossible for a schoolgirl like me to survive. That I'm still alive now is all thanks to my father. Even if I can't help him, I don't want to become a burden. Please, Captain, help me gain the ability to protect myself. Please train me. She looked at him with a face full of determination. 5 days have passed since training began. At this intensity an ordinary schoolgirl would have quit, yet she endured. Shin Ji-woo frowned, thinking, her will is not ordinary indeed, blood doesn't lie. At that moment someone rushed over to report, Mayor, an emergency. Ju startled, zombies. No, the Daecheong Dam has been destroyed. He was shocked. What? The Daecheong Dam? The man quickly explained this afternoon contact was lost, an inspection team was sent, all managers were found dead, and a massive breach appeared. What about the extent of the damage? That's a bit strange. The flow should have followed the Jum River confluence, and flooded the lowlands. But the water seemed to have a will of its own and suddenly changed direction. He panicked and shouted that the current course is Jairyong Stream, and it will head to Kelung Terrace. Ryu Min-seok smiled gently and said, please could you kill me? Shin Ji-woo asked in surprise, what? He challenged, "What are you talking about?" Ri Min-sik answered calmly, "Since being reborn in this monstrous body, I've lived with one question for a long time. You close your eyes as if gathering all your courage, whether I can die." Shin Ju-woo was stunned to hear this. That question had haunted him. But after the battle with Baekdu Hyan, he finally understood. You continue, the way to kill me is simple but guaranteed to work. Cut to another location under the rain. Shin Ju-woo shouted angrily, "From this moment impose a state of alert." He told his subordinates, "I'll immediately rescue all personnel deployed to Keelung Terraces. All units switch to emergency response." One stammered, "Sir Mayor, it's dangerous for you to go alone. Form a special team and depart." Shin Ju-woo urged. "There's no time, we don't have the manpower. Report the water flow and damage to me in real time." Unable to stop him, the subordinate complied, "Yes, sir." In the rain his eyes grew even more frenzied. He recalled Ryu Min-sik's words, being killed repeatedly in short intervals until rebirth is impossible. He wasn't afraid and smiled with satisfaction. Among the methods, the simplest is the most certain. The memory cut back to the heavy rain in an enclosed space. The time of being must be prolonged. Thunder crashed and water surged as a cry of suffocation escaped. Ryu Min-sik continued, "If that's the case, then in the end He paused, looked at Shin Ju-woo, and calmly said, "We'll die too." Cut scene. In some space, a strange creature emitted bizarre cries. It launched many small offshoots everywhere. Seeing that, Ryu Min-sik swiftly shoved Han-ta-nai to the side. But it didn't stop it, it continued attacking relentlessly. Ryu Min-sik scooped Han-ta-nai up and ran while teasing, "Impressive. Lieutenant Han, your accuracy is still high in this pose." She blushed and said, "Leave that for later. What are you going to do now?" He thought parasiters' bite can easily pierce biological tissue. He winced and searched for a way but couldn't break the sturdy outer wall. His expression was resolute. "Southeast area of Keelung Terrace, G1 sector, end of the corridor. If my memory is right, it's definitely there." Luckily he spotted a door. He quietly rejoiced, "There it is." Then more quickly the two moved toward the door. He then shouted loudly, "Ji-wong." The electronic panel activated and lit up, announcing initiating Bunker to 1 access procedure. "Please look at the recognition light to authenticate the left iris." Riminsio quickly, "G1 activate emergency protocol Golf 171. The screen confirmed the emergency protocol code and opened. The door swung open rapidly. He nimbly tossed Hanani inside. At the same time the panel announced closed. The monster could not enter. The trapped arm sprayed streaks of blood. The arm fell off. Hantanai immediately stood and fired at the offshoots. She exhaled in relief. Looking around she said, "Deputy Mayor, what is this place?" She added, "And why?" Hantani went pale. "You re not going in." Outside, Ryu Min-sik was struggling with the monster. He seemed to be using all his strength, but the offshoots were sprouting from his fellow teammates, and they stabbed into him, causing him pain. He looked up in surprise. They were charging at him. Back to the pouring rain. Shinju abandoned the car. He rushed up the stairs, remorseful inside. "What am I doing?" He remembered the memory how to kill him. "You told me to kill you. Why say that to me?" Ryu Min-seok remained calm. "Hero Shinju, you may not know me well, but I know you very well." He continued, "You are more upright than anyone, bearing heavier responsibilities, the one who can make hard choices for the greater good." He looked at his hands after the battle with Baekdu Hyan. "I felt myself change." He asked him, "Did you see it too, Mr. Mayor?" He continued, "One day I might lose my mind, become uncontrollable, and turn into a mutated entity." Ryu Min-sik begged, "Please, Mayor, if that happens, please kill me." He thought of Ridame. "I want to remain Dami's father until the last moment." He placed it on his chest. "I don't want it in Dami's memories." Then recalling the horrific memory, he was a terrifying monster again. That was when he was unusually mutated. He reassured, "But please don't worry too much." Ryu Min-sik tried to control himself but couldn't stay calm. He said, "I still can't become a monster." He transformed into a terrifying monster, with a wide mouth that wanted to devour everything. Its body could kill him, but he used them to kill people. He confided that until Dami's world is restored, even if he must die, he tried to separate from the monster. "I must not die." Even though his hand had mutated, with bloodshot eyes and one eye full of tentacles, perhaps he was afraid of himself. A voice rang out, "Ryu Min-seok, activate parasite mode." Parasite. An officer turned zombie thrust grotesque tentacles, hungry, and lunged at Ryu Min-seok. His red eyes had lost all humanity as he charged. He wouldn't let him rampage. His strong hand reached out and crushed the gaping mouth, causing him to scream and struggle to break free. Now altered, Ryu Min-seok still had his reason, so he quickly dealt with him thoroughly. With a single squeeze the body exploded into pieces. Hearing the loud noise, other zombies swarmed in, frenzied to tear him apart. Ryu Min-seok officially entered the fight, gritting his teeth, ready to survive against the zombies. His hands transformed into sharp blades, slicing each attacker cleanly, blood spraying and staining him red. Again and again, zombies surged forward in all kinds of forms. They growled and screamed, their bulging eyes flashing with furious sparks. They bared lazy, glaring mouths, wanting to swallow him whole. Ryu Min-seok, panting, had already expended a great deal of energy. There was no trace of emotion left in his eyes. With a roar he lunged and slammed a powerful punch into the mutated face, startling it at his astonishing fighting power. Hantanai suddenly faltered, somewhat anxious. What scared her more was the imposing appearance of Ryu Min-seok. He gradually recovered and gave a polite smile. Sorry to keep you waiting, Lieutenant Han. Half his face had returned to normal, the other half still mutating. Her, are you all right? Ryu Min-seok briefly explained the situation. Bunker G1 was built to counter a coup against the Republic of Korea, a command center controlled by the Joint Chiefs. I thought they couldn't get in here, and as I predicted, luckily, Hantanai kept her gun ready and said, please explain to me, she shouted, interrogating Deputy Mayor. Why do you look exactly like those earlier? Have you been infected? He calmly admitted it, and then turned to reassure her. Yes, but you probably don't need to worry. It seems my body has controlled it, which only makes you more shocked. How could that be? He wasn't too surprised by her reaction. You know that if it were me, this could happen. Hantanai's eyes shifted from surprise to resolve and doubt. Ryu Min-seok's heart sank. This feeling was different from the deaths he'd experienced in his past life. It felt like being pulled back from the brink of death, exactly the same as then, even though the circumstances were completely different. But the emotion overwhelming him was certainly identical to that time. The will to protect Dami beside him. The will. Maybe Dami isn't someone he must save. Rather, her existence is what keeps him living. But look at us, even this steel-hard bunker has shown anomalies. In the previous life, what I faced inside this bunker were the corpses of soldiers, those who had taken their own lives. But where have they gone now? What on earth happened inside this bunker? Lost in thought, something glittering ahead caught his attention. Ryu Min-seok, surprised, felt his lips tremble as he recognized the thing before him, an approval seal. Keelong Authority Top Secret Military Pool Level 1 Basement. And even below that, at the end of the narrow corridor, was a dark place with long endless stairways and a dim light that made it look very mysterious. The only light fell on the door of a red room with a hongmonth. More importantly, documents showed that door had its own name, if I recall, Minvong Gate, a top-class classified area. Ryu Min-seok gently picked it up. In this building only one person has access to that place. It is the commander of the Joint Chiefs Infection Response at Lilong Platform, Major General Quark Sung-keel. But unable to stop the disaster, could not bear the crushing guilt. The cold, dried corpse was the final proof of his pride. He had ultimately destroyed the approval seal, the only thing leading to Minvong Gate, and fled through death. Yet now the approval seal lay intact on the floor, as if someone had deliberately left it. Holding the approval seal after all those events and finding it so easily here, he suspected. Why is that? The damp room, the dim light, and the quiet were only the prelude to darker events to come. Outside, the helicopter thumped, making the sea ripple. Shinju-woo, piloting, shouted to the radio, "This is Alpha, Bravo, respond." He reported the situation sounding dire after Daecheong Dam collapsed. Rushing water was pouring into Jairyong Stream. The view below pained him. The entire Kalung Terrace was flooded. Bravo, withdraw immediately. When there was still no reply, he grew more frantic, shouting until his throat strained, "This is Alpha. Anyone receiving the signal, respond now." Ryu Min-seok. Recognizing his call, he looked up to listen. Hantanai asked, "What's wrong?" He brushed the thought off, thinking he had misheard. "No. I feel like someone is watching me. Maybe it's just a hallucination." He brushed the thought off, thinking he had misheard. "No. I feel like someone is watching me. Maybe it's just a hallucination." Seeing the engraved numbers on the floor, she called to him, "Wait, look at this." Touching the carvings, she suspected there were knife-like marks under the table. One very long string of numbers. So on the floor were numbers 37, 35, 12, and 610. Ryu Min-seok noticed the crude scratches too, as if hastily carved a 13-digit sequence. Even I have never seen such a variable. They both wondered, so what does it mean? He put a hand on his hip and scanned around. "It seems we've seen everything in this bunker. Now move to another place." She disagreed. "Return to the storage, or go back to Daejeon to recalibrate." Ryu Min-seok immediately rejected those options. None of that. What? Stumping a few times, he hinted we would go deeper than this basement, down to the lower level. Hantanai was surprised. "There's an even lower level." He nodded. "Yes, definitely. There lies technology to enhance Daejeon, and it's the key to reviving the Republic of Korea." He didn't forget to warn her that this meant facing far greater danger. Recalling the recent situation, he emphasized they would endure things far harsher than before. Ultimately, he wanted to see how she would react to Lieutenant Han. "Will you come with me?" Hantanai resolute with a steely voice. "I am a soldier who exists to protect Daejeon. I have only loyalty." Looking into those eyes was determination. "Once pledged loyal to you, I will follow to the end." Ryu Min-seok smiled in satisfaction. "Good. Then let's go to the Hongman." She raised no objection and complied. But neither of them realized that their conversation had been watched by a gaze hidden behind the crude grate.